The outcome, however, proved somewhat disappointing. In the end, it stabilized at around 60,000-fold. That was the culmination of numerous divine treasures he had collected. Yet, it was only 60,000-fold. In the realm of the Supreme Peak, this could only be considered an entry-level accomplishment. Not to mention the Tribulation realm. Without a divine body exceeding 80,000 times, it was simply insufficient to contend with the Tribulation realm. In some universes dedicated to cultivating divine bodies, there were some extraordinary individuals who directly abandoned their origin source to cultivate divine bodies. What they sought was the sheer terrifying divine power. Jian Wushuang had also come across records of Tribulation realm practitioners cultivating divine bodies in some ancient texts. They had obtained methods from other spacetimes, possessing the most perfect techniques for refining divine bodies. This allowed rapid enhancement of their physique with significant amplification. However, obtaining such methods was extremely arduous. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang possessed the Beast God weapon. Now, with his foundational divine body at 60,000-fold, once he fully unleashed the Beast God weapon in its complete form, he dared not imagine how powerful he would become. The final step, the second nascent soul. Jian Wushuang looked towards the corner where the origin source was nurtured, reached out, and, with the catalysis of the Guti heart, experienced a tearing consciousness pain, causing him to grin. After approximately an hour, the second nascent soul succeeded. A figure identical to Jian Wushuang stood opposite him. "Greetings, my true self. Greetings, second nascent soul." When Jian Wushuang revealed a smile, the counterpart on the other side also smiled, because they were one and the same. Crash! Jian Wushuang took out a set of exquisite eternal treasures and handed them to the second nascent soul. At the same time, he also took out many basic treasures, gave them to the second nascent soul, and then brought the other party into the starry sky origin source. The current second nascent soul, although an emperor, might be a bit weak in terms of strength. A lot of treasures are still needed for investment. However, the second nascent soul, who has long been stationed at the Grave God Mountain, can easily obtain a large number of treasures. Leave the seclusion. Jian Wushuang stood up directly, and the surrounding aura vibrated. Then it returned to calm. Even the space couldn't sense Jian Wushuang, and at this time he had already left the cave. Mountain and sea. Waves surged. A figure appeared above. Jinling was the first to notice and immediately came forward. After discovering the change in Jian Wushuang's aura, Jinling couldn't help but show a happy expression and said, "Good, good, very good." Jian Wushuang's successful Dao merge would significantly elevate the foundation of the entire Qixin temple. How could Jinling not be happy? Lord Jinling. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Hu Qing, who had been observing this place, also noticed his emergence. Transforming into a stream of light, he arrived instantly, just a bit slower than Jinling. "Congratulations, Brother Wushuang." Hu Qing hurriedly came forward to congratulate. This time, the Dao merge took Jian Wushuang 100,000 years. The time wasn't too long or too short. "Let's go back and talk." With a wave of Jinling's big hand, an aura enveloped the two of them and instantly arrived at the top of Grave Tomb Mountain. The three of them sat in a circle, and after Jian Wushuang briefly recounted his Dao merge experience, he began to inquire about Jinling's plans. Now Jian Wushuang doesn't need to stay in the Qixin temple anymore. He needs to go out. But outside, there is Mieshang with the strength of the half-step 7 tribulations realm. Although he has assimilated with the Temple of World Annihilation, who knows if he can come out again. Back then, the other party broke through the higher heavens and entered the Moro spacetime. Jian Wushuang naturally wouldn't take such a risk. Even though he was confident now, Jinling wouldn't allow him to go out. So, the only option was to venture into other spacetimes. However, the original plan was to send only Jian Wushuang, but now he proposed bringing a group of people along. This put Jinling in a difficult position. The current situation was far from optimistic. Drawing another group of super-inheritors, shortage of manpower was a minor issue. The bigger problem was that after these individuals achieved their cultivation, they might not return. "I need to reconsider this matter." Jinling aged visibly at the thought. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang didn't press further and could only nod. On the side, Hu Qing hesitated to speak. In that case, he decided to head to the temporal river. Seeing Hu Qing's expression, Zhenling also understood. The three of them fell into a momentary silence. In the end, Jian Wushuang broke the silence, changing the subject. Lord Zhenling, my second nascent soul will stay at the Qishan Temple, cultivating on the Grave God Mountain. I thought about it, we shouldn't put all our treasures in one place. Don't you agree? Zhenling rolled his small eyes, seemingly contemplating something. He wasn't concerned about Jian Wushuang's second nascent soul. What about the matter with the heart demon? Upon hearing the term heart demon, Jian Wushuang recalled that he had suppressed the other party. Immediately, he waved his hand, bringing out the heart demon. I forgot about this guy. Jian Wushuang felt somewhat embarrassed, scratching his head. The matter of the heart demon should be crucial to Zhenling. In the past, Mieshang took away the 10,000 demon, blood demon, and Shanjun. Presumably, the heart demon was also significant to Mieshang. Bang! Let me out! Heart demon inside the bottle roared incessantly upon discovering the outside world. However, upon seeing the Zhenling, it couldn't help but shrink back, refraining from making any more loud demands. Jian Wushuang casually pulled out the bottle stopper and released the heart demon. Heart demon stood in place, cautiously watching the three individuals. It realized that it couldn't defeat any one of them, especially Zhenling, who felt like an endless sea. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, seemed like a black hole. Hu Qing was more like an ancient tree, calmly undisturbed. You made your request and then what? Jian Wushuang stared at Heart Demon with a playful tone. Heart Demon, born from the evil desires of humans, naturally sly and smooth. Upon hearing Jian Wushuang's words, it quickly waved its hands, smiling apologetically. Great ones, I just felt a bit stifled. Otherwise, I can go back in. Saying this, Heart Demon tried to crawl back into the bottle but was seized by Jian Wushuang by the neck and pulled over. Zhenling. This guy seems unaware of the situation with Mieshang, Jian Wushuang said calmly. However, Heart Demon, in his grasp, dared not move at all. After hearing his words, Zhenling was momentarily stunned, then turned to look at Heart Demon, saying coldly, You don't know Mieshang, but you should know about Wind Demon, right? Where is he? I know where Wind Demon is. Heart Demon answered honestly. He's with Mo Jun, both suppressed in the original universe. Seeing the cooperation, Jian Wushuang released his grip. Phew! Heart Demon prostrated on the ground, not daring to take a breath. After learning about Wind Demon's whereabouts, Zhenling shook his head. In the outside world, there was nothing they could do. However, being able to control Heart Demon meant Shanjun couldn't become complete. Three great true monarchs, Emojun, Gujun, Shanjun. Emojun was suppressed in the original universe, and Gujun could not come out of purgatory for a while. The only variable was Shanjun. This was also the reason why Zhenling targeted Shanjun everywhere. Knowing this, Jian Wushuang felt speechless. Originally, he wanted to give Shanjun a helping hand. Now, it seemed that there was no chance. It was unknown if there will be a chance in the future. If they ever meet again, he would surely repay the debt. After all, he owed a debt of gratitude. It was something he could not forget. Hu Qing, on the side, listened with a clouded mind. Fortunately, Hu Qing's character is simple and he did not dwell on it. Alright, you've just successfully merged with the Tao. Take a good rest. Let Hu Qing show you around some places on Grave God Mountain. In a while, I'll need your help with something. As for the passages to other spacetimes, it's not something that can be built in a short time. It requires careful planning. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing both stood up and bid farewell, then left together. Although it was called sightseeing, it was actually for cultivation. Grave God Mountain had many Tao arenas. The training grounds of the three major divine masters were all here, as well as Qishan's Tao arena. However, Qishan's Tao arena was still in a closed state. The Tao arena of the three major divine masters were open, but you had to reach the 50th level to cultivate there. Wushuang, Let me take you to the public area first. You need a token to cultivate on Grave God Mountain. Hu Qing explained. Actually, similar to the Elder Palace, the resources on Grave God Mountain are best for the top-level inheritors. But for most inheritors, it's too demanding. So many people go to the Elder Palace. Jian Wushuang nodded in agreement with Hu Qing's words. Grave God Mountain was probably created to leave behind a group of the most elite inheritors. As for the mediocre ones, they were considered elite and cultivated slowly. Whoosh! The two figures arrived at the foot of Grave God Mountain. Thunder Island. An island on a mountain. Sounds fantastical, but it is a fact. Because part of Grave God Mountain is condensed seawater. An island in the sea is quite normal. The island was also very lively. Over the past 100,000 years, countless inheritors arrived here. However, each time the number decreased. The first-generation inheritors probably wouldn't take long before there was no fresh blood. But the second-generation inheritors had already grown up outside, and those with good aptitude had been brought into the Qixin Temple. After coming in, they went directly to Grave God Mountain without any screening or need for any tempering. They only needed to cultivate for thousands of years on Grave God Mountain. Those with strength could stay, while those not strong enough were sent out. But the threshold for these second-generation inheritors to enter the Qixin Temple was very high. Firstly, absolute loyalty and swearing by the origin were required. Then it was potential. The ultimate Tao, of course, goes without saying. But the number of people on the ultimate Tao was very few. Most of them were second-grade origin source Tao Lords and some mutated origin source Tao Lords. Only by continuously cultivating these individuals can enough seedlings be selected for the future tribulation. Go this way. Hu Qing led the way. On the road, many people stared at Hu Qing, and some even whispered, "Is he Hu Qing?" Yes, the contemporary Grave God Mountain's first-ranked inheritor. He has reached the 60 levels, his strength is terrifying, and he is among the first batch of inheritors. A white-robed youth with decent strength, full of admiration, added, "He is also the pride of our original universe and the strongest in the Tongtian Buddha realm." This statement immediately enhanced the luster of the faces of many strong individuals from the original universe. However, there were only a few inheritors from the Tongtian Buddha realm, and only the white-robed youth was present. He had only recently entered the Grave God Mountain in the past 10,000 years. Most of these inheritors were Tao Lords, with only a few being emperors. Some cultivators, who were unremarkable as Tao Lords, shone brightly after becoming emperors. As a result, the Grave God Mountain had also recruited quite a few emperor inheritors. Hu Qing was not very concerned about these gazes and comments. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, teased, "Hu Qing, I didn't expect you to be so famous. Brother Wushuang, you're joking. It's just some empty reputation. Senior Shang broke through a few days ago and has also reached the 60th level." Hu Qing replied, turning around. Shang's breakthrough made Jian Wushuang's expression change. Shang was definitely a strong candidate. If Zhenling agreed to his proposal, he could consider including Shang. Even if he didn't consider it, if Zhenling agreed, Shang would likely be arranged to accompany him. Shang was the first ultimate emperor in their temporal river, and also the longest-reigning first-ranked inheritor of the Grave God Mountain. After briefly surpassing Hu Qing, he erupted in breakthrough again and had now reached the 60th level. He was probably approaching the tribulation realm. Hu Qing might need some more time, but Shang's background was much deeper than theirs. After all, when they were not yet born, Shang was already a Tier 5 emperor. Coming to the Grave God Mountain, he quickly became a Tier 6 emperor, seamlessly entering the Supreme Peak, and then even fought against the half-step tribulation realm Fuego. No matter how you calculated, he would be the inheritor who broke through the tribulation realm the fastest. Apart from Shang, Jian Wushuang was also interested in a few other well-known ultimate emperors on the Grave God Mountain, especially the Emperor of Light and Shadow, Guangying, who had once been in the same batch as them. In the current setting of the Grave Tomb Mountain, Jian Wushuang also ranked in the top 5. There were also Tongtian Buddha and Jin Wuyang. The foundations of these individuals were quite impressive. Their potential was also considerable. especially Jin Wuyang and Tongtian Buddha. Both of their origin sources were not the ultimate origin sources, but they were abnormal or special origin sources. They could compete with ultimate emperors of the same level without being weaker. They even surpassed a large group of them. Now, the Grave Tomb Mountain had 100 ultimate emperors. However, Jin Wuyang and Tongtian Buddha being in the top 10 did not mean they surpassed most of the ultimate emperors. Among the ultimate emperors, some more unconventional ones still surpassed them, like the monster Hu Qing, or individuals like Shang, ancient creatures who had cultivated for endless ages, with terrifyingly deep foundations. On the other hand, individuals like Guangying and Gu Qianluo managed to enter the top 10 among these monsters, which was no simple feat. Thinking about these, in no time the two arrived at a large hall after 100 years. Ancient Desolation Hall. Jian Wushuang looked up and silently pronounced the words on the plaque. Whether this ancient desolation represented the Moro spacetime or the desolate divine master, he did not know. Brother Wushuang, this ancient desolation hall is the 100 Affairs Hall on the Grave God Mountain. Inheritors accepting tasks or new inheritors must come here first. Hu Qing pointed to the hall, explaining to Jian Wushuang. At this moment, there happened to be a spirit guardian and an envoy from the Vermilion Bird Temple entering the hall. Seeing this situation, Jian Wushuang and the others followed suit and entered. This group of inheritors was numerous, exceeding 10,000. Among them were many emperors. Jian Wushuang knew that they were probably gathered from the outside world. They were likely here to study for a short period and probably wouldn't stay too long. In a scale of inheritors of this magnitude, it would probably take hundreds of millions of years for such a group to arrive. Despite the 10,000 people, the queue in the hall was not crowded at all. The grand hall appeared vast, capable of accommodating countless individuals. The spatial structure within might only be discernible upon reaching the cosmic realm. Within the hall at this moment, only Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing possessed such strength. As for the guardian spirit, he could hardly be considered human. The two walked directly to the front counter, ignoring the newly arrived inheritors. "My lord, are they the inheritors of this place?" Many in the group were curious. Perhaps, from the time of their birth, they had heard legends of the Qixin Temple. It was their first time entering, and curiosity naturally ran high. Among them were a few first-generation inheritors who had come from the outside world. Returning now, there was nothing particularly unusual. Upon seeing Hu Qing, eyes were filled not only with envy but also with respect. Upon hearing the inquiries of those youngsters, the guardian spirit promptly interrupted. "Show some respect. This is the Grave God Mountain. They are your senior uncles. Not to mention that figure is the current first-ranked inheritor of Grave God Mountain." "The first-ranked inheritor? Stronger than Emperor Wanxing?" someone curiously asked. This question elicited a bitter smile from the first-generation inheritor. Emperor Wanxing. He had long since become a supreme existence. Ruling over an entire universe, his power and influence reached their peak. Among these youngsters, many hailed from the Wanxing universe. Naturally, they held immense admiration for Emperor Wanxing, considering him the strongest presence in Grave God Mountain. "Well, you'll have to personally ask Wanxing about that." After receiving the token, Jian Wushuang glanced at some of the tasks displayed above. Most of them were missions from the external temporal river. Tasks from the 4 great realms were scarce, and if present, they were auxiliary tasks posing no real danger. These tasks were open to inheritors, and the newcomers from the external world didn't need to bother with them. They just had to diligently cultivate on the Grave God Mountain for thousands of years. "Now, where should I go?" Jian Wushuang asked. Hu Qing pointed to a bronze furnace outside. "Ordinary inheritors need to temper their physical bodies now. But Wushuang, you don't need to do that. Just go climb the mountain directly." Tempering the physical body. Jian Wushuang indeed had no need for this. His physical body was incredibly powerful. Back in the universe bronze furnace of Shanjun, he had completed the 10th refinement, reaching a perfect state. As for climbing the mountain mentioned by Hu Qing, Jian Wushuang understood. It was something all inheritors had to do. The height they reached would also serve as a criterion for future resource allocation. With Jian Wushuang's current strength, reaching the 60th level was effortless. But it remained uncertain if he could reach the 70th level, according to the divisions. A universe master could reach the 70th level. In other words, a 3-tribulation realm powerhouse could reach the 70th level. The 80th level was the 5-tribulation realm. The 90th level was the 6-tribulation realm. The 99th level would be comparable to the strength of a 7-tribulation realm. Surpassing the 99th level and passing through all the way would truly make one a 7-tribulation realm powerhouse. Perhaps, when establishing the Grave God Mountain, it was to find an inheritor capable of reaching the 7-tribulation realm. A 7-tribulation powerhouse. No matter which temporal river, they were absolute dominant figures. The Qixin of the past even rivaled 8-tribulation powerhouses. That kind of strength was even more terrifying. No wonder even Mieshang behaved obediently and didn't cause trouble. After breaking through the higher heavens, Mieshang's strength remained at the half-step 7-tribulation realm. Unfortunately, his arrogance got the best of him. Maybe it was due to calculations, or else there wouldn't have been any trouble with Qixin. Before the rise of Qixin, killing them off would have been better, securing control over the Moro spacetime. Or perhaps it was because of calculations up to now, thinking that no powerful being controlling the force of life could emerge from the Moro spacetime. All possibilities existed. Jian Wushuang stood at the foot of the mountain, gazing upwards. Hu Qing stood by his side and spoke. Climbing this mountain is not dangerous, nor is there any opponent. You just need to release your aura and proceed forward. However, once you reach the 50th level and try to open a cave mansion, you will encounter guardian savage beasts with considerable strength. Savage beasts? Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered. If Hu Qing described them as having considerable strength, it must be noteworthy. Encountering guardian savage beasts when opening a cave mansion, then at the 80th level, wouldn't it mean facing savage beasts at the Tribulation Realm when opening a cave mansion? But the current Qixin Temple, apart from the Purgatory, didn't have any Tribulation Realm experts, right? Zhuangzhong had also been thrown into the temporal river by Jinling. Could it be that this place still suppressed many Tribulation Realm savage beasts? If that were the case, he could make a hefty profit this time. The entire body of a savage beast was a treasure. Its blood and flesh could be refined into essence blood, supplementing his beast god origin source. The bones could enhance his divine body, serving as a great tonic. And the savage beast's origin source, though barbaric, held some intriguing rules from above. Also, it was a treasure. But now that he was an emperor, ordinary savage beasts naturally wouldn't catch his eye. At least, he needed savage beasts with Tribulation Realm strength for consideration. So, let's start from the 60th level. I'll be back soon, it should be quick. After saying this, he directly ascended the steps of the Grave God Mountain, leaving behind Hu Qing alone, eagerly looking forward. At this moment, there were many people on the steps. Many were even establishing caves. Although there were no savage beasts below the 50th level, the structure of Grave God Mountain was exceptionally tough, and the overall quality exceeded that of Eternal Treasures. Opening a cave was not so simple. Even if the quality below the mountain was not good, it still took several years to establish. Many inheritors were below the 50th level. Few people were above the 50th level. Among the emperors, reaching the 50th level required supreme peak strength. Even a weak supreme peak was not enough. Even Wuxia, I'm afraid, could only reach a little beyond the 50th level. After all, many ultimate emperors were not supreme peak variations of the origin source. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang was a bit puzzled. How did Qixin accept Wuxia as a disciple? Even if he was a named disciple, it was a bit far-fetched. In the normal supreme peak, the strength could still be seen, but in Grave God Mountain it was mediocre. And he had practiced for so long without any progress. Putting aside these distractions, Jian Wushuang took a step, and his aura didn't even reach the normal state, yet he instantly reached the 50th level. Phew! In just a breath, Jian Wushuang directly reached the 50th level. It's worth noting that there were only dozens of inheritors on Grave God Mountain who had reached the 50th level. After all, the time of cultivation was still very short. Those who could reach the 50th level were all strong among the supreme peak. Jian Wushuang stepped up effortlessly. Except for Hu Qing, when the countless people at the bottom looked at Jian Wushuang, their eyes were filled with disbelief. Who is he, and why is he so strong? The Supreme Peak experts who were establishing caves on the 50th level felt a familiar aura and instantly broke through the barriers. When they saw that it was Jian Wushuang, there was no surprise. You can be considered to have merged with the Tao. The speaker was Zhen Wuyang. However, this was just one of Jian Wushuang's avatars. His true self should be in the temporal river outside the external world. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly upon seeing a familiar face, not saying much, and prepared to directly open up a cave mansion. At this moment, on the 50th floor, there were more than 10 cave mansions. Of course, some cave mansions had already been abandoned. Some of the powerhouses who had reached the 50th floor had already broken through and reached higher positions. Seeing Jian Wushuang opening a cave mansion on the 50th floor, Hu Qing below was somewhat surprised. With his insight, he could see that Jian Wushuang's strength was by no means weaker than his own. At least, he could reach the 60th floor. There was no need to waste time on the 50th floor. However, in the next moment he understood. Roar! A fully grown desolate beast, at the supreme peak level, instantly charged out from the grave god mountain. As if it had been suppressed for countless years, the moment it appeared, its aura suddenly surged, an unmatched force emerged, and the intimidating power made many inheritors below pale-faced. The strength of this desolate beast could definitely rank in the top 10 on the grave god mountain. When Zhen Wuyang felt the aura, his face trembled, unable to help but remind, "Be careful. This desolate beast is not simple. It's very likely that it broke through its strength while being suppressed." When he opened up a cave mansion on the 50th floor, he didn't encounter such a powerful desolate beast. The strength of this desolate beast was slightly stronger than his true self. It could only be said that Jian Wushuang's luck was a bit unfortunate. He thought that when Jian Wushuang opened a cave mansion on the 50th floor, his strength only reached that level. However, he knew Jian Wushuang's true thoughts. The current Jian Wushuang not only coveted treasures but also sought to improve himself. Even more so, he thirsted for life and death battles. Unfortunately, on the grave god mountain, everyone was a formidable opponent. If the formidable Tribulation Realm expert Zhuangzhong were present, he could have tested his own strength. Facing the desolate beast, Jian Wushuang didn't even draw the Juyun sword on his back. With a swift movement, he instantly appeared next to the desolate beast. There was no change in his aura. He simply used a knife-hand strike, piercing through the beast's body. The force from this knife-hand strike erupted from within, directly causing the entire body of the desolate beast to burst. Jian Wushuang was even startled by the power of his own strike. Having just broken through, he didn't control it well for a moment, unexpectedly causing the opponent to burst open with a single blow. Fortunately, he possessed the power of devouring. With a single hand, he gathered the exploded flesh and blood into a mass. The beast, originally the size of 10,000 feet, now turned into a drop of essence blood in the blink of an eye. Jian Wushuang smoothly absorbed it into the beast god weapon. The origin source within the beast god weapon strengthened once again. Although the beast god weapon had already reached completion, the internal origin source was still somewhat weak, not reaching the level of the universe origin source. Hence, continuous devouring of powerful bloodline beasts was needed for improvement. Zhen Wuyang couldn't believe his eyes as he stared at Jian Wushuang. The exchange just now happened too quickly. Even Zhen Wuyang couldn't perceive any changes in Jian Wushuang. That ancient desolate beast, stronger than his own true form, was completely defeated. How terrifying must Jian Wushuang's strength be? Seeing the dumbfounded Zhen Wuyang, Jian Wushuang revealed a faint smile, raised his hands slightly and said, "See you later." After speaking, he flashed and had already reached the 51st level. Then, one by one, he opened up caves on each level, and the slaughtered desolate beasts vaguely entered his beast god weapon. 60 levels. So far, the highest among all the inheritors on Grave God Mountain. This news instantly detonated all the inheritors on Grave God Mountain, drawing them to come and witness. Even Shang, who had been in seclusion, walked out of his cave. Seeing Jian Wushuang, they didn't speak. The two just nodded at each other. On the 54th level, a powerful figure with a body covered in white bones walked out of a cave. He looked up at Jian Wushuang above, revealing a hint of unwillingness in his gaze. He was one of the top 3 super experts on Grave God Mountain, having reached the universe realm in space and created a unique pinnacle skill. He was the ultimate emperor of the Bone Dao lineage. Before Hui Qing's Dao merge, only Shang could surpass him. He didn't care, for Shang was the original ultimate emperor on Grave God Mountain, having cultivated for much longer than him. He was confident that he would surpass Shang in the future. However, later on, Hu Qing successfully merged with the Dao, instantly catching up with his pace. Upon returning from the mortal realm, he directly became a supreme peak powerhouse, surpassing Shang in just one epoch. This made him feel an unprecedented pressure, to the extent that he ignored external conflicts, dedicating himself entirely to cultivation. The universe named after him in his hometown was breached by the Temple of World Annihilation, but it still couldn't make him emerge from seclusion. Now, someone had surpassed him again, shaking his Dao heart. It was Jian Wushuang, the once invincible Dao Lord. Just after merging with the Dao, he was about to take on the title of an invincible emperor. Ranked 4th, Guangying's figure was like a shadow in a dark zone, also lifting his head to gaze at Jian Wushuang. However, his Dao heart showed no change, because deep inside, he always believed that light and shadow would obscure spacetime, and in the future, he would be the true superpower. Besides these top-tier super inheritors, there were many ordinary inheritors who had just arrived at the Grave God Mountain. In their eyes, there was envy and yearning. Reached the 60th level of the Tomb God Mountain, with the strength to traverse the entire temporal river. The current strongest in the outside world was the master of the Azure Dragon Temple. However, their strength was only at the 60th level. Of course, in terms of real combat power, it was probably Zhuang Zhong who was the true number 1. After all, he was a Tribulation Realm powerhouse. But Zhuang Zhong hadn't revealed himself and had been sitting in a dangerous place, deterring the Temple of World Annihilation. This was more effective than launching an expedition. If conquering could destroy the Temple of World Annihilation, these inheritors would have long gone out. If a Tribulation Realm expert took action, Miashang might also intervene. Or rather, Miashang had other means to create Tribulation Realm strength. After all, the power of that holy water was too terrifying. A strength on the 60th level. Among those who could reach this standard in the entire temporal river, except for those in the Tribulation Realm, there were no more than 5 individuals. Broly was not a match for the Azure Dragon. He probably hadn't reached this Cultivation Realm yet. Now, atop the Grave God Mountain, there were 3 individuals, including himself. Jiang Shang outside also possessed this level of strength, surpassing even the 60th level. Add to that the master of the Azure Dragon Temple. Exactly 5 individuals. Such formidable strength, even in some powerful temporal rivers, would still be considered top tier. In the former Moro spacetime, despite having a large number of individuals in the Tribulation Realm, and many universe masters, there were rarely any conflicts, with the Emperor being the main authority. Someone with the strength of Jian Wushuang would have been considered a divine general back then, positioned quite high. This was because the strength of individuals like Divine General Mayin varied, some stronger and some weaker. Level 60, truly extraordinary, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. At this point, he felt a hint of fatigue. That was the low rule power of the Grave God Mountain, pressing down on him. Now he was curious to see how powerful the desolate beasts on this level were. The origin source of the Beast God weapon was almost complete. To reach the level of cosmic origin source, he only needed a desolate beast with the strength of a Tribulation Realm. Just on the 59th level, the desolate beast he encountered had attacks comparable to a Tribulation Realm. But that wasn't enough. It wasn't just about comparable attacks. The crucial point was that the strongest move was on par with a Tribulation Realm. If it were truly a Tribulation Realm desolate beast, Any random move would be as powerful as the strongest attack of the previous desolate beast. In terms of strength, there was a world of difference. At the peak, Zhenling, feeling this scene, smiled. With a hint of thought power, he manipulated the grave god mountain and awakened a true tribulation realm desolate beast. Consider it a favor for Jian Wushuang. He even begged Jian Wushuang. Consider it a small reward. Jian Wushuang's eyes shifted, and he noticed a presence quietly appearing. This time, before he could even open up his cave mansion, a desolate beast appeared, probably the work of Zhenling Buzz. In the 60th level of the Grave God Mountain, an inconspicuous stone was cracking. The size of that stone was only a few yards long and wide. Not particularly eye-catching. But in the next moment, the stone shattered, and a beast man with a head and 2 feet rushed out. It was indeed similar to what Jian Wushuang had expected. The desolate beast in front of him could no longer be considered a desolate beast, but a killer. The Frost Demon Clan. Jian Wushuang stared at the opponent's appearance, thinking of a monster he had seen in the Moro spacetime. That was the dominant race in the Moro spacetime, the overlords of the ancient times. Although they were overlords, their numbers were very scarce, even rarer than special life forms. In total, not more than 10,000 of them. But they were born as Earth Immortals and became emperors in adulthood. With no constraints, breakthroughs were even easier during their advancement. He had seen their portraits in books. You actually recognized the Frost Demon Clan. The small killer, looking surprised that Jian Wushuang could recognize him, asked in astonishment. Jian Wushuang calmly replied, I happened to come across information about them. Now, which era do you belong to? Why can't I sense the operation of the temporal river? The small killer with sharp horns looked up at the void sky, somewhat puzzled. Jian Wushuang couldn't be bothered to explain. He casually replied, Defeat me and you'll understand. Ha ha ha. Your aura is too weak. Defeating you would be too simple. Try it. Jian Wushuang took direct action. In an instant, he reached behind the opponent. His speed was so fast that even Shang nearby couldn't see clearly. Only Hu Qing, who had returned to the 60th floor, saw the moment when Jian Wushuang flashed past. The speed had already merged with time. Jian Wushuang's speed far surpassed that of the emperor. Others couldn't see it, which was normal. Those inheritors above the 50th floor, who initially could discern Jian Wushuang's techniques, now found that their awareness couldn't keep up with his changes. Jian Wushuang, now behind the fierce beast, threw a punch. Surprisingly, the opponent, without turning around, caught his punch with hands behind its back. This surprised Jian Wushuang. With this level of strength, I'm afraid I'll soon understand the truth. The small beast suddenly turned its head, opened its brown lips, and a burst of violent force instantly erupted, directly facing Jian Wushuang. Because his hand was caught, Jian Wushuang could not dodge. He could only withstand this blow. Boom! An attack directly shattered the mountain, rivaling eternal treasures. Jian Wushuang disappeared into the rolling dust. Hu Qing's forehead broke into a cold sweat. The next moment, feeling a familiar aura in the sky, he looked up. It was Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was draped in dark red battle armor covering his entire body. Above the battle armor, there was still a trace of that destructive power. Crack! Jian Wushuang revealed his face, stared at the assailant below, and asked, What level of tribulation realm are you? You're able to withstand that? The small beast assailant was astonished. Seeing the treasure on Jian Wushuang, its eye sockets contracted, saying in shock, Beast God weapon, you actually recognize it? This time it was Jian Wushuang's turn to be surprised. The opponent recognized the Beast God weapon, probably having some reputation in Moro spacetime. Although the Frost Demon Clan had fallen later in Moro spacetime, it was still a super clan. The small beast assailant gritted its teeth, glaring at Jian Wushuang fiercely and said, It's hard for me not to recognize it. Back then, someone used the Beast God weapon to sneak attack my Frost Demon Clan, killing my clansmen. Looking at the opponent's appearance, it seemed genuine, and the hatred was not small. I, Guxia, will avenge my clan today. A roar shattered countless rocks around. On the 60th floor, the other two, Shang and Hu Qing, were also forced back by this roar. Tribulation realm. At this moment, whether it was Hu Qing or Shang, or the other ultimate emperors below, they could all feel the oppressive force emanating from Wuxia. Only the tribulation realm could induce such pressure. It's only the 60th floor. How could there be a tribulation realm? Everyone found it unbelievable. However, Jian Wushuang was eager to give it a try. He hadn't expected to encounter the tribulation realm ahead of time. It seemed unnecessary to battle on this floor. Otherwise, the 60th floor would become untenable. With a thought, he communicated with Jinling, instructing them to teleport him to the 65th floor. Are you sure? The power of the law rules there will exert significant suppression on you. Jinling inquired uncertainly. Jian Wushuang remained resolute. At this moment, only he was clear about his own strength. The law rules forces on the 65th floor couldn't suppress him. Instead, they would allow him greater freedom. Swish! Swish! Although Jinling was somewhat puzzled, he complied. Like Jian Wushuang, he wanted to see how powerful he became after merging with the Tao. The 65th floor was deserted. The space here was even more solidified. Gravity exceeded myriad times that of the outside world, and the power of the law rules was terrifyingly strong. Jian Wushuang found it challenging to tear through the space in this location. When he lowered his head, he could clearly see the figures below. What's going on? Wuxia was somewhat puzzled, wondering how he suddenly ended up in this place. Moreover, he felt a significant oppressive force in this location, subtly affecting him. Human, is this your doing? Wuxia inquired. Jian Wushuang did not refute, calmly nodding. I've said it before, as long as you defeat me, you can know everything. As you are now, there's no need to ask too much. Just understand, if you don't defeat me, you will die. Jian Wushuang roared, and the aura around him began to boil. The instantly erupted strength made the short-statured Wuxia use both arms to resist. Around Jian Wushuang, a dark red arc of electricity began to swirl. This was his strongest state under normal circumstances. If not for the power of the starry sky, his current state would probably be his utmost strength. You even hid your strength, Wuxia sneered. Unimpressed even after sensing that Jian Wushuang had unleashed a strength comparable to his own. He was very calm. Jian Wushuang wasn't surprised by this, because he knew the innate secret techniques of the Frost Demon clan. They were naturally talented in the Tao of transformation. After reaching the tribulation realm, one could undergo a metamorphosis. Wuxia's strength was not weak. He might be a tribulation realm expert. The ability to transform oneself, unleashing a stronger power. Quit the nonsense. Let's get started. Jian Wushuang charged forward. The two found themselves on a staircase amid scattered rocks, facing each other from a distance. In just a moment, he launched an instant attack. This time, Wuxia struck first, sharp claws appearing in front of Jian Wushuang in an instant. Unfortunately, Jian Wushuang had already erupted with his aura this time, his strength far surpassing the past. He saw through the opponent's move and directly grabbed Wuxia's wrist. Jian Wushuang's hands were like a chain tightly binding Wuxia's wrist, especially the left arm infused with the beast god claw. It emitted a dark red light. The power of the 60,000-fold divine body instantly burst forth with boundless strength. The two stood in a stalemate, Wuxia gritting his teeth, his forehead with spiral patterns, and beads of sweat forming. Blood vessels burst in his eyes. They were competing in divine power. The onlookers below could see clearly because this time it was not a quick battle but a stalemate. Although Jian Wushuang firmly held the opponent's wrist, he could still sense the opponent's strength. To outsiders, Wuxia seemed to be in a passive position now. But only Jian Wushuang knew that his current strength was somewhat insufficient. If he didn't erupt again, he might be shaken off by the opponent. Beast God! Jian Wushuang shouted angrily, the dark red aura on his body instantly skyrocketing. The power of the beast god erupted completely. The beast god domain opened wide. Jian Wushuang's divine body power transformed into the power of the beast god. Crack! After Jian Wushuang erupted, he easily crushed Gu Sha's technique, freeing his left hand and delivering a punch to his opponent's chest. Cracks appeared in the soft battle armor on Gu Sha's body. Brown blood sprayed from Gu Sha's mouth. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang dodged in time, avoiding getting splattered. In the domain, Jian Wushuang's speed was astonishingly fast. After punching Gu Sha away, he instantly circled behind him, raised his leg, and delivered a fierce kick. Under the dual explosive force, Gu Sha suffered minor injuries, and his battle armor completely cracked. In the midst of this, Jian Wushuang didn't forget to taunt. "If you want to make me bleed, you'll have to do it faster." After saying that, he clenched his fists and ruthlessly smashed them onto Gu Sha's head. Boom! The ancient temple, which had been smashed to the ground from high in the sky, struggled to rise. This time, Jian Wushuang didn't make a move again. It wouldn't be interesting to resolve the opponent too quickly. He could sense that Gu Sha's strength was far beyond this. At this moment, the beast god domain he activated could be considered the power of the beast god, amplifying his divine body to about 80,000-fold. Already at the tribulation realm, coupled with the formidable power of the beast god, he could use divine power to violently strike the opponent. These powers were considered top-notch at the tribulation realm, but not at the peak. If he couldn't withstand this level of power, the opponent would disappoint him. Gu Sha stood up from a small crater, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Staring at Jian Wushuang with crimson eyes, there was no fear but rather a strong fighting spirit. "Your divine body is 80,000-fold. Not bad." Gu Sha tore off the tattered armor, revealing a well-defined chest. However, the limbs were very slender, and it was hard to tell how strong they were. Seeing the armor being casually torn off, Jian Wushuang frowned. Although he was confident in his own strength, he wasn't so arrogant as to destroy a top-notch eternal treasure. The opponent's strength was so formidable, and being a frost demon clan of the tribulation realm, there should be a set of top-notch eternal treasures on them, even if not universe treasures. Now, he could easily buy top-notch eternal treasures. Moreover, the opponent was in the tribulation realm, and their treasures couldn't be ordinary. They were easily broken by him in just a few moves. "What's wrong? Do you think the treasures on my body are rubbish?" Gu Sha moved his wrist, and the broken bones had long since healed. Then he said, "Because my divine body exceeds 100,000-fold, I don't need any defensive eternal treasures." As soon as the words fell, a power that shook the heavens and earth suddenly erupted. Jian Wushuang's gaze became fervent. He felt that the opponent was not that simple. Under the eruption of Gu Sha's divine body again, he indeed reached a 100,000-fold. The eruption of power made his speed surprisingly fast. Jian Wushuang didn't even see the opponent's shadow. He was directly knocked down by a foot from the opponent. Just as he was about to get up, Gu Sha exerted force again, stomping him into a depression with a kick. If it weren't for the beast god weapon, this kick might have pierced through his divine body. Boom! This wasn't over yet. The Gu Sha didn't give Jian Wushuang any chance. With a single hand clenched into a fist, each punch thundered towards Jian Wushuang's head. The force shattered the ground directly, embedding Jian Wushuang's entire body into the earth. Ancient superpowers were truly extraordinary, especially those who followed the path of the divine body. The strength of that force made Jian Wushuang feel despair. The power of the beast god. Jian Wushuang endured the cracking of his divine body and forcibly erupted the power of the beast god. This time, he unleashed twice the power of the beast god. His divine body also surged to 100,000-fold, matching that of Gu Sha. With a flip, he instantly shot up. Gu Sha raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You recovered so quickly." The opponent didn't know that Jian Wushuang possessed a robust life power. Even if he didn't use twice the power of the beast god, the opponent couldn't kill him. This was the advantage of the origin source. His foundation was too strong. Although both were currently using pure divine power, the origin source was indispensable. Jian Wushuang, who rose from the ground, quickly entered a state of life-and-death struggle with Wuxia. The battle was difficult to decipher. Even the double power of the beast god was something Jian Wushuang could currently withstand. As for the beast god weapon, there was even less of a problem. Although the origin source within the beast god weapon had not yet reached the level of the universe, it could sustain Jian Wushuang's tripled beast god power. However, handling the tripled beast god power proved to be somewhat challenging for Jian Wushuang. The strongest was still the doubled beast god power, amplifying the divine body to a staggering 100,000-fold. In essence, it added a whopping 40,000-fold to the basic divine body. The beast god power referred to the force unleashed when the beast god weapon, the candle dragon, fully restored its complete form, a force Jian Wushuang dubbed the beast god power. Initially, when it wasn't in its complete form, it could only unleash the beast god domain and amplify the divine body. As for the beast god power, it was weak and incompatible with Jian Wushuang's own divine body. At that time, Jian Wushuang didn't pay much attention to it. However, after becoming complete, Jian Wushuang discovered that this beast god power was much stronger than the force unleashed by his basic divine body. Now, with Jian Wushuang's divine body enhanced to 100,000-fold, the transformed beast god power could erupt with a strength surpassing his own. Jian Wushuang became stronger with each battle, and there was no trace of decline in his divine body. Although the life power and the power of all things could replenish themselves, the injuries to the divine body were challenging to recover. Even if Jian Wushuang were injured, it would lead to a decline in his divine body. However, this time, despite sustaining some injuries, his divine body became stronger with each battle. This was the resilience of the beast god power. Boom! A fist directly slammed into the face of Wuxia. How is this possible? Wuxia couldn't believe it. After being injured, his divine body had started to decline, but Jian Wushuang's divine body was growing stronger with each battle, already capable of suppressing him. Jian Wushuang was full of fighting spirit, showing no intention of stopping, continuously pounding Wuxia. If he really wanted to kill the opponent, he could simply use his sword technique. However, there was no need. He was just playing. Since the opponent's divine body was strong, he would defeat him using his own divine body. Swish! With a casual kick, Wuxia was sent flying into a pile of stones. Jian Wushuang, panting heavily, sneered, "Is this all the strength you have?" Wuxia in the stone pile did not reply. Jian Wushuang could clearly sense the opponent's aura and did not believe that Wuxia had fallen so easily. "I heard that your Frost Demon clan can undergo a metamorphosis after reaching the Tribulation Realm. I wonder if it's true." Jian Wushuang stared below and continued, "If you don't unleash your power, I won't give you another chance." The people below, witnessing Jian Wushuang beating Wuxia, thought he was about to win. However, seeing him not pursuing further, they were puzzled. They couldn't hear Jian Wushuang's voice, only seeing his lips moving. Jian Wushuang, filled with the rising battle intent, didn't want to just kill the opponent like this. At least he should display some surprising strength. Otherwise, it would be too much of a waste. He didn't engage in battle with the origin source against his opponent. It seemed unjust to him without displaying some strength. Whoosh! Wuxia rose from the pile of stones, casually patting off the dust on his body. With faltering steps, he walked out and looked at Jian Wushuang, his eyes trembling. "Do you know that I can undergo metamorphosis? Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you after my strength surges?" Wuxia's voice was low. Metamorphosis was the innate secret technique of their clan. Very few knew about it, and the fact that the person in front of him from the human race was aware of it suggested a high status, probably within the Qixin temple. At this moment, Wuxia's thoughts were still in the ancient Moro spacetime. His strength back then was not considered formidable. Even in the Tribulation Realm, he was just an ordinary member. Jian Wushuang could suppress him, indicating that Jian Wushuang's strength was not outstanding either. In his impression, there were many formidable figures among the 5 Tribulation Realm experts of the Qixin Temple. And the 3 Divine Masters were even super strong at the 6th Tribulation Realm. So he thought Jian Wushuang's status shouldn't be very high. However, knowing the innate secret technique of their clan was extraordinary. Probably someone like a genius from the Qixin temple. Only extraordinary geniuses would be so arrogant as to offer him the opportunity to undergo metamorphosis. Jian Wushuang stared at Wuxia, shook his head, and said calmly, "Are you so confident?" Ha ha ha. Wuxia burst into laughter. His eyes began to condense, and his aura started to change. He continued, "It seems you don't know much. Do you think my metamorphosis is simple? The reason the Frost Demon clan could dominate the Moro spacetime in the ancient Desolation era before the arrival of Higher Heavens era was due to their real abilities. Without relying on any external objects or secret techniques, purely relying on talent, they could rule the temporal river alone. The sparsely populated Frost Demon clan could be so powerful. How could they be ordinary? Mortal, bear witness." A dazzling white light flickered. Wuxia laughed manically, saying, "Are you ready to embrace death?" Hum. The white light exploded, and the dazzling brightness made it difficult for Jian Wushuang to open his eyes. He could only vaguely see a figure, curled up in a ball, slowly standing up. After the light dissipated and the aura dispersed, Jian Wushuang saw the appearance of Wuxia after metamorphosis. The appearance had undergone a tremendous change from before. From short and weak, it transformed into robust and sturdy. There were few changes in the facial features, but the two antennae on the top of the head were retained. For a moment, Jian Wushuang couldn't sense the opponent's strength. "How do you find my transformation? Are you satisfied, sir?" Wuxia opened his palms and slowly raised them. Jian Wushuang was about to nod in response when a powerful force instantly flipped him, sending him back thousands of miles. Before he could stabilize his figure, Wuxia was already in front of him, pressing Jian Wushuang harshly to the ground with a knee. With a single knee pressing against Jian Wushuang's neck, Wuxia looked down at him and said in a cold voice, "My current divine power is 180,000-fold. Upon hearing this number, Jian Wushuang's eyes contracted. 180,000-fold. What kind of monster was this? Was this the super-powerful of the divine body path? He had heard before that the stronger a divine body path cultivator became, the more powerful they would be in the later stages. However, he had not expected it to be so outrageous. Earlier, he thought that after the transformation, the opponent's strength might reach a maximum of 120,000-fold, or even 130,000-fold, which would be impressive. But he had not anticipated it reaching a direct 180,000-fold. This level of divine power might directly rival a superpowerful in the three tribulation realm. No wonder the other party was so confident. It was truly a surprise. At this moment, Jian Wushuang, in the hands of Wuxia, was like an ordinary person, with no room for any counterattack. He was continuously being beaten. The divine body was already cracked, plummeting from 100,000-fold to 60,000-fold. The power of the beast god faded away. Wuxia bound Jian Wushuang's neck with his tail, lifted him into the air, and pounded his chest with fist after fist. Soon, the basic divine body could no longer hold up. Jian Wushuang's divine body completely shattered. His face was covered in blood. 6 of his orifices were bleeding. "No, enough!" Jian Wushuang struggled to utter a few words, his eyelids uncontrollably attempting to close. However, Wuxia did not stop, relentlessly ravaging Jian Wushuang, all the while taunting. "Didn't you want to see my true strength? Why can't you endure it now?" This time, Jian Wushuang truly couldn't endure. Though his divine body was blessed with the power of the beast god, allowing him to reach the strength of the tribulation realm, the difference compared to his opponent was too vast. 100,000-fold against 180,000-fold seemed like a difference of 80,000-fold, but in reality it spanned countless levels. Even if Jian Wushuang had an additional 10,000-fold, he still couldn't match his adversary. Not to mention there was an extra staggering 80,000. Even with the threefold augmentation of the power of the beast god, boosting his divine body to a 120,000-fold, it wasn't enough. In a contest of divine power, Jian Wushuang lost, but it wasn't entirely his fault. Gu Sha was a formidable figure of the tribulation realm in the divine body path. His foundational divine body was only 60,000-fold, and after Tao merge, the assistance to the divine body wasn't significant. Even after spending countless treasures, he only managed to elevate it to 60,000-fold. How could he compare to his opponent? It was only after the complete formation of the beast god weapon that he possessed such formidable divine power. If he could elevate both his divine and physical bodies to the perfection of an emperor, then he might stand a chance against his adversary in battle. Those special beings, the divine bodies at the supreme peak, could reach up to 80,000-fold at the limit. Jian Wushuang, if he reached that level, could possibly unleash 5 times the power of the beast god by elevating the origin source of the beast god weapon to the cosmic level. He was not afraid of Gu Sha. However, at the moment, just after successfully merging with Tao, all his treasures were depleted and couldn't reach that level. After abandoning the divine body, Jian Wushuang moved his thought force, and the power of life instantly surged. Although the injuries of the divine body had not fully recovered to their peak, the injuries on Jian Wushuang's physical body healed instantly. As for the origin source, even if the opponent had 180,000-fold divine powers, it couldn't harm his starry sky origin source. He had illuminated half of the universe and an endless starry sky. Even if the universe master came, there was no guarantee that he could shatter Jian Wushuang's origin source, let alone Gu Sha following the divine body path. 180,000-fold divine bodies were indeed powerful. It could already rival ordinary 3 tribulation realm powerhouses. Of course, facing the universe master was certainly not without competition. Mastering the tribulation of the universe was not that simple. And now, Gu Sha was facing a powerhouse who controlled half of the universe from the origin source. Buzz! Jian Wushuang's origin source erupted instantly. A breath powerful enough to influence the law rules burst out, making Gu Sha's mind tremble. Eternal ancient transformation. Gu Sha's eyes were shocked. He didn't expect Jian Wushuang to have such a powerful origin source. He had thought that, like him, Jian Wushuang was a powerhouse on the divine body path. However, it turned out he was an existence that mastered the ultimate Tao. Feeling Jian Wushuang's origin source, Gu Sha, astonished, directly let go of his tail, tossing Jian Wushuang aside, and trembled. "You're just an emperor." Jian Wushuang slowly stood up, arcs of electricity running over his body, turning into a faint blue color, the power of the starry sky. This was still his first time exhibiting the eternal ancient transformation after merging with Tao, reaching the peak state. Surprised, Jian Wushuang's gaze became unusually firm. Clang! Drawing the Jueyun sword from behind, time and space ceased to flow. Gu Sha even retreated in fear. That force reminded him of the former universe master. "I've had my fun. Now it's time for you to die." Hum! A massive sword shadow appeared in the heavens and earth. This made everyone tremble. With a single slash, Gu Sha, with his 180,000 divine body, felt a slight asymmetry in his eyes, and the next moment his body turned into 2 pieces. Jian Wushuang instantly created hundreds of swords, and in the midst of Gu Sha's surprise, he shattered into pieces. Raising his hand, the power condensed from the vast power of all things directly exploded. Boom! After the explosion of the power of all things, the body of Gu Sha turned into blood, floating in the void. Jian Wushuang was surprised. Even this didn't kill the opponent. The 180,000-fold divine body was indeed extraordinary. However, now that Gu Sha was in this bloody form, now reduced to flesh and blood, Jian Wushuang used his devouring power to drag him directly into the palm of his hand. Under the suppression of the powerful starry sky power, he obliterated the residual consciousness in the blood, leaving only blood filled with boundless power. Phew! Jian Wushuang infused this blood into the beast god weapon, breathing a sigh of relief. Finally resolved. Now, without using the Starry Sky Chronicles, he could slay peak experts of the 2 tribulation realm. Of course, despite Gu Sha's battle power reaching the threshold of the 3 tribulation realm, it was ultimately on a pure divine body path and still somewhat weak. Suppressed for so many years, the 180,000-fold divine body also did not play a significant role and were easily dealt with by him. It could only be considered as peak of the two tribulation realm at best. If he were to unleash the Starry Sky Chronicles, he could contend with ordinary experts in the tribulation realm. However, when it came to the universe masters, he might not be their match. Among the tribulation realm, the gap between those who mastered the cosmic tribulation and those who did not was immense. This was incalculable. If they were to fight in the universe controlled by the universe master, any number of experts in the tribulation realm would fall. In their own Dao arena, the universe masters were almost invincible. This also made Jian Wushuang very interested in his own one-thought universe. If his one-thought universe could become a real universe, it could be a dynamic Dao arena. By then, wouldn't he be invincible below the fourth tribulation realm, and even contend with fourth tribulation realm experts? Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but feel excited. He was still just an emperor now, and his understanding of the universe had not yet reached true perfection. Once he illuminated an entire universe in the Starry Sky origin source, he might be able to unleash a true one-thought universe. Continue cultivation? This was obviously not appropriate. Even if Jinling were generous, he couldn't give him all the treasures. He still needed to venture out on his own. The 65th level. Jian Wushuang casually opened up a cave. But this time no desoult beast appeared. He really wanted to kill another one. The origin source of the beast god weapon had just entered the level of the cosmic origin source, still weaker than the half-universe within his body. Forget it. I'll find one myself later. Jian Wushuang shook his head. He was satisfied this time. After casually opening up the cave, he let the second nascent soul stay behind, while his true self went to the 60th level. When Hu Qing and Shang saw him, their eyes were colored with admiration. At this moment, even the relatively taciturn Hu Qing had a tenacity, a determination to surpass Jian Wushuang. In fact, Jian Wushuang used to be like them. Remembering the time at the Three Kings Court, he witnessed Hu Qing successfully merging Dao, and wasn't it an envious sight? Seeing the strength of Shang, rivaling the resurrected Fuego, filled him with even greater longing. Now that he has successfully merged Dao, not only has he surpassed them, but he has also opened up a considerable gap. The path of the strong is the right one. Jian Wushuang's heart was unwavering. He would continue on this path. Amidst congratulations, the three of them chatted freely. This was the first time chatting with Shang. Jian Wushuang learned some secrets of the original universe from Shang, and gained a better understanding of his personal thoughts. As for the matter of traveling to other spacetimes, he did not mention it, as Jinling had not given a definite answer. If he spoke prematurely and Jinling did not agree, wouldn't that be awkward? Just as the three were preparing to enter Hu Qing's cave to reminisce, Jinling's transmission came, and Jian Wushuang's expression changed. Jinling transmitted his message, and the three went to the mountaintop together. This made Jian Wushuang very happy. It meant that Jinling was moved. Perhaps his strength impressed Jinling, or Jinling had confidence in them. In Jian Wushuang's view, Shang's character was not bad either. He was a perfect inheritor and a righteous, strong cultivator. Integrating knowledge and action is the mark of a true gentleman. No need to say much about Hu Qing. When it comes to character, he himself has some flaws. Considering the repeated betrayals, the trust Jinling placed in him was immense. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang was deeply moved. For the glory of Qishan Temple's restoration, they must not shirk their responsibilities. At the Morning Regret Pavilion, when Jian Wushuang and the others arrived, several people were already waiting here. Originally ranked 3rd, Gu Qianluo, as well as the 4th-ranked Guangying, and Jian Wushuang's old acquaintance Jin Wuyang. 6 individuals stood, with only Jinling sitting alone. The matter is as it is. All of you go back and consider. This time, no more than 10 people will venture into the alternate spacetime. Absolutely do not disclose it to anyone, Jinling said, and then let the others disperse. However, Jian Wushuang was left behind. Returning home, already aware of the situation, he had made a decision in his heart, finding it quite easy. It was different for the others. especially for the senior figures of the original universe, Jin Wuyang and Shang. The two of them attached great importance to the external temporal river, especially the original universe. They felt that Jinling's directive for them to go to other temporal rivers was a blatant evasion. There was hesitation in their hearts. On the other hand, Gu Qianluo and Guangying were quite relaxed, only considering gains and losses without caring much about the outside world. Thinking about it, it made sense. They didn't have much attachment to the outside world. After coming to the Qixin Temple, their only goal was to become stronger with no intention of giving back. Otherwise, with the chaos in the outside world, they would have gone out. Shang was in seclusion, or else he would have gone out as well. Jin Wuyang's main body had always been conquering in the outside world. There was also Tongtian Buddha, who hadn't even left a clone behind and was currently leading 16 universes in the outside world, confronting the Temple of World Annihilation head-on. These people were the future backbone. No wonder Jinling hesitated. It was also for this reason. In case they raised a white-eyed wolf, it wouldn't be good. With only the two of them left, Jian Wushuang didn't hold back and directly sat down. Jinling personally poured tea for Jian Wushuang. TSK, taste it. This is the tea from your temporal river. You won't know when you'll get to drink it again in the future. Indeed, after Jinling and the others left, it would probably take tens of thousands of epochs for them to return. Normal tribulation realms were simply ineffective. At least 3 or even 4 tribulation realms were required to have a certain effect. Among the current candidates, all were potential tribulation realm cultivators. The opportunity had come. Becoming a tribulation realm was not difficult. But how far one could go depended on their own abilities. In the long run, practitioners like Jin Wuyang and Tongtian Buddha could actually go further, because they had extremely strong adaptability. This was also the reason why Jinling initially favored Shang. Being 2 against the heavens was also not good because the path was difficult. Just like Jian Wushuang, who as a Dao Lord could kill the Supreme Peak, which was incredibly against the heavens. But thinking about it, in the same era, practitioners like Hu Qing and Gu Qianluo were already Supreme Peak experts before Jian Wushuang merged with the Dao. It meant that Jian Wushuang won the gamble, succeeded in merging with the Dao, and surpassed everyone. If merging with the Dao failed, their strength would probably be inferior to these people. The risk was too great. After this opportunity, there would be very few chances, but I will do my utmost to come back as soon as possible, Jian Wushuang declared firmly. Whether it was for his hometown universe, the temporal river, or the power of death, he had to confront Miesheng. There was no escaping it. That was fate. Jinling had some confidence in Jian Wushuang and wasn't afraid that he would truly run away and not return. How much do you know about Miesheng's situation now? Jinling asked tentatively. Since Miesheng's appearance, there had been little connection between the two. However, in the cave of the Mahayana Spirit Mountain, Jian Wushuang traveled to the once fragmented Moro spacetime and saw a lot, gaining some understanding of Miesheng. Jian Wushuang didn't hide anything and explained the matter of the power of death and the power of life. He felt that the complexity of this matter was not only due to the power of life but also because of the involvement of Qixin. He just couldn't easily say it. If Miesheng was solely after him, he probably would have been annihilated long ago. Why wait until now? After hearing the whole story, Jinling nodded slightly inside. Have you seen the future of this temporal river? This sentence startled Jian Wushuang. Subconsciously wanting to shake his head, he found himself frozen. With a wave of Jinling's hand, in front of them, the image of a temporal origin source appeared. A temporal origin source already shrouded in darkness. This temporal river will eventually perish. This is the prediction of a powerful seer. Jian Wushuang was stunned upon hearing this. Initially, he thought Jinling could see that he had traveled to the future, but it turned out that someone had foreseen the changes in the future spacetime. This temporal river was destined for destruction, and the Qixin Temple would be destroyed along with it. Seeing the shocked expression on Jian Wushuang's face, Jinling smiled faintly and spoke, "Of course, you don't have to believe in the existence of that prophecy." Jian Wushuang, just like when he entered the future spacetime, had absolute faith. In the world to come, he failed to merge with the Tao and ultimately perished. As for the subsequent demise of the temporal river, he was unaware. However, being able to see the future failure made him feel that there was probably some connection. Is this existence a powerhouse from the Qixin temple? Jian Wushuang asked curiously. Predicting the future, the universe masters could achieve such feats. The first true king had also foreseen the future of the Three Kings' court. Unfortunately, when facing some extraordinary individuals, accurate predictions were impossible. This was also the reason why Jian Wushuang was able to succeed in merging with the Tao. If the predictions were too accurate, he would probably have already failed. It's not the case. Besides me, the Qixin temple no longer has such super strong individuals. Even the original entity back then wasn't that powerful. Jinling sighed and shook his head. If there was such a formidable existence in the Qixin temple, he wouldn't be in such a passive situation. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, pressing for answers. Why, senior? Would you help the Qixin temple predict the future? Since the prediction indicated that the Qixin temple would be destroyed along with the temporal river, there must be some connection between them. Otherwise, there was no reason for such a matter to be brought up out of the blue. Just like now, a presence he couldn't fully comprehend suddenly appeared, directly telling him that he would become a Nine Tribulations realm powerhouse in the future. Surely, he couldn't believe it. Speaking of which, the relationship with the Qixin temple is not significant. But there is some personal connection with the temple master Xianxia, so I was willing to inform them. Now, without Jinling saying much, Jian Wushuang began to understand. No wonder the Black Tortoise Temple and the Qixin Temple were somewhat out of sync. It turned out that, after believing the words of some old fellow, they were preparing to leave early, without even thinking about restoring the Qixin Temple. Zhenling seemed to perceive Jian Wushuang's thoughts and hurriedly corrected. Actually, the Black Tortoise Temple is not in an easy situation either. In recent years, due to the emergence of Mieshang, their assets have been almost depleted. In external wars, the Temple of World Annihilation had the holy water, assisting practitioners in undergoing the sacrifice ritual to enhance their strength. Qixin Temple relied on the puppets of Black Tortoise Temple. This was the only way they could barely suppress the other side. If the Black Tortoise Temple ran away, the Qixin Temple would now be on the brink of collapse. As for this prophecy, I believed it somewhat before, but after seeing you all, I changed my mind, Zhenling said as he stood up. Previously, he thought that the one who would destroy this temporal river was the inheritor nurtured by his Qixin temple. Now that Mieshang had emerged, Jian Wushuang finally realized. It was Mieshang. He was the true mastermind behind the scenes. As for the inheritors, they would all destroy the temporal river because of Mieshang. That was the real root of the problem. So, the solution lay in dealing with Mieshang. As for that inheritor, they were no longer important. The Temple of World Annihilation also had an inheritor, perhaps someone from their side. He didn't need to worry about it. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged, no longer asking questions but sinking into silence. To predict the future with such accuracy, who exactly was that being, and what cultivation realm had they reached? Oh, by the way, do you have any suitable candidates? Zhenling turned to Jian Wushuang, steering the conversation away from the destruction of the temporal river. The prospect of the destruction of the temporal river was still somewhat oppressive. Jian Wushuang raised his head, looking at Zhenling. He did have a few suitable candidates in mind. What about Wuxia? When Zhenling heard the name Wuxia, he paused. He hadn't expected Jian Wushuang to mention Wuxia. For a moment, Zhenling took in a sharp breath, unable to comprehend why Jian Wushuang would bring up Wuxia's name. With astonishment, he looked at Jian Wushuang and asked, "How did you think of him?" "I just feel that this person is not simple. Despite his ordinary strength, he managed to become a personal disciple of Qixin. Moreover, he has lived from ancient times to the present. Apart from Mieshang, he is the only ancient cultivator who has not fallen." After hearing Jian Wushuang's explanation, Zhenling's heart stirred. Previously, he hadn't really considered this question. That Wuxia could survive until now, even drifting through endless starry sky with the Qixin temple and arriving at this temporal river, without perishing. His luck was simply too good. Despite Wu's current ill-fated circumstances, not even able to secure a position as a palace master, crossing the temporal river should have required at least a tribulation realm expert. For Wuxia, a mere supreme peak, to survive until today was somewhat unusual. Put him on the list of candidates. Jian Wushuang nodded, then continued, "We should also send Wan Yen and Dong Sheng over." This time, Jian Wushuang changed his approach, not intending to bring over all those super inheritors. It's better to cultivate some who are more loyal, rather than ending up with a group of selfish individuals who might be difficult to command later. Currently, Dongsheng and Wan Yen both possess considerable strength. Dongsheng has even become a supreme peak powerhouse, catching up with the first group of emperors who entered the Qixin Temple. Although they are temporarily not as strong as Jin Wuyang and the others, they have great potential. I'll dispatch their original selves, and there will be further tests for them in the future. Jian Wushuang naturally didn't have much to say about this. Everything was decided by Jinling, he just gave a suggestion. Plus, with some people from the Grave God Mountain, it should be enough. Jian Wushuang added. Hu Qing, Gu Qianluo, Guangying, Jin Wuyang, Tongtian Buddha, Shang, Dongsheng, Wanyan, Wuzhua. Adding Jian Wushuang, it's exactly 10 people. In a while, I will subject them to targeted tests. Whether they can pass depends on them. Jinling also didn't give Jian Wushuang a definite answer. But this already satisfied Jian Wushuang greatly. At least he won't be alone in venturing into unfamiliar spacetimes. There will be some people accompanying him. Oh right. This time I'm leaving you with one more thing to do. I need your help with it. Jinling looked at Jian Wushuang and revealed his plan. Upon hearing it, Jian Wushuang applauded. The odds of success increased by another 10%. Revive the Qixin Temple. In the second epoch since Jian Wushuang ascended the 65th level of the Grave God Mountain, within the god's tomb emerged a towering figure, a tribulation realm body. Climbing out from the tomb, it stood amidst the chaos of the god's tomb. Qixin. Jian Wushuang had spent an entire epoch and exhausted countless life forces to finally revive the body of Qixin. Jinling also seamlessly entered Qixin's body. The figure continuously shrank until it was the size of a palm. Jian Wushuang stood in the chaos like a grain of sand compared to Qixin's body, vastly inferior in both strength and size. Haha, with this body, I can break the law rules of the Qixin Temple and go to the temporal river. Qixin exclaimed excitedly. Previously, Jinling couldn't leave the Qixin Temple at all. Now, with the revived body, not only did its strength soar to the half-step 7 tribulation realm, but it could also freely enter and exit the Qixin Temple. The worry about Mieshang also diminished significantly. At the same time, they could confidently let Jian Wushuang and others go to other spacetimes. It wasn't that they were overly cautious, but there was one thing they were very clear about. There was life power within Jiangshang's body. Perhaps Mieshang didn't need Jian Wushuang at all to reach completion, thus combining death and life to achieve the pinnacle of the Great Tao. Congratulations, my lord, on your rebirth. Jian Wushuang looked exhausted, but there was also joy in his heart. He couldn't bear all the burden alone. With the Zhenling reaching the half-step 7 tribulation realm, it was indeed a significant trump card for dealing with Mieshang in the future. Mieshang currently had no idea that the Zhenling had revived Qixin's body. When the time came, they could catch him off guard. Wrapping the flesh of Qixin, the Zhenling, once stored within, looked at Jian Wushuang and smiled, saying, "Thanks to your life power, otherwise, even if all the treasures of the Qixin Temple were exhausted, it would not have been enough to revive this flesh." Indeed, that was true. Even with Jian Wushuang's abundant life power, it would take an epoch of time. One can imagine how immense the life power required to restore Qixin's flesh must be. The treasures of Qixin Temple were lifeless. Yet Jian Wushuang was alive, able to continuously generate life power. It's just something I should do. Jian Wushuang shook his head. This bit of help wasn't much. During this epoch, he continuously generated life power, taking the opportunity to refine his control over it, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Zhenling's brows furrowed. his expression changing. A breath came from the grave god mountain. Sensing something amiss, Jian Wushuang also looked in the direction of the grave god mountain. A new aura soared. It was the power of the tribulation realm. Someone had broken through. "Let's go, take a look." Jinling smiled even more this time, his eyes almost closed into slits. "Who says fortune never comes alone? Misfortune never comes singly." This time it was truly double happiness. The two instantly arrived at the peak of the grave god mountain. Among the 60th floors and below, a beam of light shot up into the sky with a figure within. Shang! Feeling the other's aura, Jian Wushuang wasn't too surprised. Shang was the first to break through, just as they had guessed. There wasn't much surprise. However, with this development, Shang probably wouldn't be able to enter other spacetimes with them. This aura instantly alarmed many people. They came out one after another to watch. At this moment on the 60th level, besides Shang, there was another person present, Wuxia, since Jian Wushuang proposed to take Wuxia along to other spacetimes. Jinling tested them both and brought Wuxia to the Grave God Mountain to cultivate alongside the inheritors. Unexpectedly, Wuxia's potential pleasantly surprised Jinling by reaching the 60th level. As for Hu Qin, he had already reached the 65th level. He became Jian Wushuang's neighbor. The speed of their breakthroughs made Jian Wushuang feel a sense of suffocation. No wonder he was the first-ranked inheritor. A beam of light covered the entire Grave God Mountain and slowly disappeared after an incense stick's time. Shang also emerged from his cave. There had been significant changes in his strength. Amidst congratulations, Shang followed Jinling to the summit. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, returned to his own cave. This time, reviving Qixin's physical body left his soul exhausted. It was time for him to rest. Next, he had to prepare for the journey to other spacetimes. He couldn't afford to be careless. As for Shang's breakthrough, Jian Wushuang didn't feel pressured by it. Unlike the pressure Hu Qin gave him, even though Shang had now broken through to the tribulation realm, it didn't feel as formidable to him as the unchanged power of the Guxia. The Guxia he had slain was already at the pinnacle of the one tribulation realm before his transformation. And after transforming, he directly reached the perfect state of the two tribulation realm. He even matched the power of the three tribulation realm. None of this posed a threat to him, let alone Shang. Now that Shang had broken through, a spot was vacant, but he didn't have a suitable candidate in mind and didn't consider recommending anyone. Let Jinling worry about that. Comfortably lying on the stone bed in the cave dwelling, Jian Wushuang slept for a whole year before restoring his soul power to its peak. During this year, Jinling also communicated with him, asking for any treasures he needed, and he was generous enough to provide whatever could be fulfilled. And the time for departure had been determined. 300 years later, they would assemble in the Hulun Mountains of the heavenly realm. Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised by this. It wasn't because Jinling was so generous, but because they were heading to the heavenly realm. He had thought they would go to the god's tomb, but it didn't matter much. It would only take a day to arrive. Exhaling heavily, Jian Wushuang casually crushed the sound transmission jade slip, then stood up and stretched his limbs. At the same time, he began to calculate the treasures he currently lacked. After the Tao merge, he hadn't properly cultivated, nor had he advanced the realms he needed to. Indeed, he was lacking many treasures. Even with treasures, advancing in realms required time for cultivation. With only 300 years left, Jian Wushuang naturally wouldn't waste time cultivating the cosmic space. Instead, he chose the divine body. The appearance of Guxia made him yearn for the path of the divine body experts, especially after seeing records in some ancient books stating that in the early stages of the temporal river, there were many divine body practitioners. What if the temporal river he was going to was also dominated by divine body practitioners? Using the origin source would surely expose him. So, he couldn't abandon the path of the divine body. Although he needed many treasures, for a strong practitioner, as long as their strength was formidable, they wouldn't lack treasures. With his mindset, Jian Wushuang took out the identity token from the Grave God Mountain and informed Jinling of all the treasures he needed. Seeing the treasures Jian Wushuang required, Jinling, who was sitting on the mountaintop, widened his eyes in disbelief. He wasn't generous to begin with, and finally being so, he still calculated meticulously. With only 300 years left, how much could these people get even if they asked for it all? But he didn't expect Jian Wushuang to be so ruthless, demanding divine body treasures worth 100 million cubic units of universe crystals. Treasures worth 100 cubic units of universe crystals. For a tribulation realm expert, it wasn't easy to come up with so many universe crystals. These treasures were enough for Jian Wushuang to cultivate his divine body to 100,000-fold. He simply didn't believe Jian Wushuang could cultivate his divine body to a 100,000-fold within 300 years. At the same time, this time, all 10 selected individuals chose divine body treasures. Even the usually modest and straightforward Hu Qing chose a divine body treasure. They weren't foolish. With only 300 years, there was no shortcut to enhancing their strength besides improving their divine bodies. Fine. Consider it my contribution to you all. Zhenling shook his head, feeling a pang of heartache. However, he wasn't about to come out at a loss. Meanwhile, his avatar set off for the original realm to seek out Temple Master Zhu Yi, the god of wealth. In no time, the awkward situation was resolved. On Grave God Mountain within the super transmission array, 9 figures descended simultaneously, drawing the attention of many around. So far, the strongest inheritors of Grave God Mountain appeared together, an unprecedented sight. If not for Shang's breakthrough, there would probably have been 10 of them. Wushuang, it seems great minds think alike, Dongsheng exclaimed loudly from the side. Among these 9, except for Gu Qianluo and Guangying, everyone had a good relationship with Jian Wushuang. Casually chatting, they directly activated the transmission array. Zhenling instructed them to go to a hidden secret realm in the original realm, where there was a natural divine body treasure that could enhance their divine bodies. This gathered them all at once. At the same time, Zhenling also transmitted a message, informing them that another powerful individual, who would accompany them to other timelines, was waiting for them there. This piqued Jian Wushuang's curiosity. Who could be accompanying them to other timelines? He knew a bit about some of the more famous inheritors in Qishan Temple. There were probably few who could catch Zhenling's attention, but they would soon have an answer. Whoosh! The 9 descended into the original realm. A familiar aura greeted them. This was the same place they had entered when they first entered Qishan Temple. Grand Yen Immortals would enter the primitive realm, while Yen Immortals entered the Black Tortoise Temple. The emperors went to the Azure Dragon Temple. Everything seemed as if it were just yesterday. Just as the 9 individuals arrived, a familiar figure came to greet them. Zhu Qi. Many recognized him without the need for introductions and followed him to the secluded area. The original realm bore some resemblance to the great desolate wilderness, both relatively desolate. Within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, they reached the secluded area as mentioned by Zhenling. It was a forested sanctuary. From afar it appeared unremarkable, but up close it struck them with awe. This forest was not as simple as it seemed. Its divine power. Jian Wushuang was the first to notice the peculiarity. Remarkably, this sanctuary possessed divine power, similar to the divine power universe. It was an excellent place for enhancing divine bodies. Zhu Qi halted and spoke. Within this forested sanctuary lies a spring of divine essence. You only need to absorb its power from 10 battles away. Do not get too close, as it may backlash against your divine body. With that, he turned and departed. The group exchanged glances and without hesitation, descended directly. The peculiar nature of divine power drew them in. They headed straight towards the heart of the forested sanctuary. The springs lay deep within the forest. At this moment, there was already someone sitting cross-legged there. The 9 individuals quickly found their positions, forcibly tearing through space and instantly entering a damp mountain cave. Upon sensing the arrival, the practitioner who had been sitting cross-legged there also opened his eyes. In those phoenix-like eyes, there was a hint of crimson flames. Who are you? Except for Wu Zua, the rest were all surprised and asked in unison. Only Wu's was stared tightly at the figure, his eyes carrying a trace of fear, because he recognized the person in front of him. He had thought it might be the inheritor, but no matter how he looked at the other party, they didn't seem like it. He had never heard of such a powerful female cultivator on Grave God Mountain. Buzz! A force of flame swept over instantly, except for Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. Everyone else took half a step back. These people were not to be trifled with either. If the other party dared to make a move, could they just let her off? When they were about to counterattack, Wu's was stopped them and also revealed the identity of the other party. She is Fanfeng. Upon hearing this name, the 9 people instantly understood. When Jian Wushuang heard it, he also frowned. Fanfeng, the leader of the 18 divine generals. They had all heard of this title, but they never expected that this time Jinling would arrange such a figure to accompany them. Wu's didn't speak, just nodded. In addition to being the leader of the 18 divine generals, the other party also had another identity, that is, the elder sister of Emperor Juyun. But only Wu Zhuo and Jian Wushuang knew about this. Fanfeng didn't even look at Wu Zhuo, but instead looked at Jian Wushuang, then said coldly, "Are you going to pull out her sword?" It seemed that the elder sister of Emperor Juyun didn't get along well with him. There was hostility towards Jian Wushuang in her eyes. Jian Wushuang also found the other party somewhat unpleasant because of this, secretly cursing in his heart. Why did Jinling have to throw such a troublesome person at them? She had an air of, "I am invincible for all eternity," making Jian Wushuang wonder if she thought she was Qixin. The title wasn't impressive, but the stature certainly was. The rest of the group showed little interest in Fanfeng, the leader of the 18 divine generals. They all found a spot to sit cross-legged, preparing to elevate their divine bodies. Wu's then transmitted, "Brother Wushuang, how about we team up and take care of this woman first? What kind of joke is that? She's someone arranged by Lord Jinling himself. Besides, I'm not a natural-born killer to just take someone's life over trivial matters." Jian Wushuang replied impatiently via transmission. But indeed, he didn't fancy this Fanfeng. After a brief response, he ignored her. Hopefully, she wouldn't stir up trouble, or else he'd have to break her legs. So what if she was the leader of the 18 divine generals? His current strength could rival the emperor of the past. The former Emperor Juyun could contend with the universe masters, and so could he. Fanfeng's strength was still lacking. Moreover, she was vengeful and narrow-minded. According to Wu Zhuo, these two were archenemies. Of course, it could just be that Wu Zhuo was beaten badly by her in the past. The leader of the 18 divine generals was at least in the top 3 under the emperor back in the Moro spacetime. Wu Zhuo was nowhere near a match for her. If he weren't standing nearby, Wu Zhuo probably wouldn't even dare to breathe in her presence. So much so that even in their cultivation session now, Wu Zhuo was stuck close to him. He didn't mind this at all. This time, heading to a different spacetime, he still needed the help of these people. Naturally, he acted as the leader. However, not everyone might obey him. For instance, Zhen Wuyang and Tongtian Buddha, these 2 old guys. Despite being from the same universe, their minds weren't trustworthy. Only Hu Qing and Wu Zhuo could be completely trusted. Dongsheng and Wan Yen were also reliable. They had a friendship. They would also fully support him when the time came. So that made 5 people on his side. The others wouldn't make much of a difference. Huff! Just as Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged, he felt a surge of divine power approaching. His devouring power instantly enveloped the incoming force, drawing it into his body. This place was indeed extraordinary. Within the span of 10 breaths, a clump of divine power would arrive, ready for him to absorb. However, he felt the speed was somewhat lacking. The others also absorbed for a while and could clearly sense that the pace was far from sufficient. Looking over at Fanfeng's direction, the spring was only 5 feet away. "Brother Wu Zhuo, what do you think?" Jian Wushuang asked tentatively. With Wu Zhuo's divine body being 70,000-fold, he probably found the supply and demand of divine power too slow as well. "It's a bit slow," Wu Zhuo replied directly. Upon this, all 9 people rose simultaneously, each advancing another battle. It seemed Zhu Qi didn't quite understand their strengths. hence his statement about potential backlash within 10 feet. Initially, they all believed him. Among the 10, Fan Feng possessed the strongest divine body, at least 80,000-fold. Next was Wuxia. As for the others, including Hu Qing, their divine bodies were roughly 60,000-fold, similar to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's 6 times multiplier was at the bottom among them. Dongxing had 63,000-fold. Thinking back to Gu Sha, who declared 100,000-fold, exuding an unbeatable aura, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but take 2 more steps forward, maintaining a distance of 5 feet. Hu Qing followed suit. Those who could maintain this distance were the ones who could convert power exceptionally fast. Although Wu's divine body was powerful, his conversion speed was somewhat slow, stopping at 6 feet. There was no need to force it. On the other hand, Gu Chenluo, feeling somewhat competitive, also reached the distance of 5 feet. The continuous onslaught of divine power turned his complexion a shade of purple-blue, but after a brief pause, he managed to endure it. Jian Wushuang smiled inwardly at this and paid it no mind, instead immersing himself in his own deep cultivation. In the span of a day, Jian Wushuang had increased his divine body by nearly 100-fold. Indeed, the assistance proved immensely beneficial. In the outside world, not only would the progress be slower, but it would also require more treasures. Here, the divine power was purer, and the absorption rate without impurities was also very rapid. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed, and now all 9 of them could reach a distance of 5 feet. Meanwhile, the obstinate and domineering divine general, Fan Feng, reached a distance of 3 feet. The strength of her divine body left them all astonished. It had nearly reached 90,000-fold, advancing at a speed far beyond theirs. Among the 9, the fastest to progress was Tongtian Buddha. In the span of 10 years, he had only increased by 5,000 times, reaching a divine body strength of about 70,000-fold. As for Jian Wushuang, despite his rapid absorption rate, his boundless divine body required an immense amount of divine power, resulting in an increase of only 3,000 times. But this was just the beginning. Hence, his progress was somewhat slower at the start, but as time went on, his speed would increase, eventually surpassing everyone else. Such were the advantages of the boundless divine body. Huff! But Jian Wushuang didn't have much time now. He had to move faster. So he could only move forward, getting closer to the spring. Jian Wushuang, opening his eyes, stared at the spring for a while. He found that there was no spring water in the spring, although it was covered by a thin mist. Still, he could see that it was a hollow abyss. Staring at it for too long would make him dizzy. Jian Wushuang dared not look too much, so he could only send a message to Wuxia to ask if the other party knew anything about it. Unexpectedly, even Wuxia didn't know. This made Jian Wushuang a little curious. But for now, he couldn't get closer, so he could only continue devouring. Splash! As he approached within 3 feet, Jian Wushuang fully absorbed the divine power, and his divine body began to multiply. When he was a Tao Lord, he could reach 50,000-fold. After becoming an emperor with the help of the beast god weapon, he could burst out to 100,000-fold, and that wasn't the limit. At the limit, he could burst out with a divine body of 120,000-fold. In other words, both his physical body and divine body could withstand it. In this way, the limit of his basic divine body could also be raised to that level. It's just that the treasures needed to reach that level are too many. Even Jinling would feel distressed. The treasures needed by a powerhouse of the Tribulation Realm in the divine body lineage could support several origin source Tribulation Realm powerhouses. Moreover, he was about to leave the Qixin Temple soon, so he could only search for treasures to enhance his divine body in other spacetimes in the future. However, at that time it wouldn't be as easy as in the Qixin Temple, so he had to desperately improve. Whatever he could improve, he would improve anyway. It was free. The power of the beast god! Jian Wushuang shouted angrily in his heart, and a dark red aura burst out of him. Instantly, everyone present was shaken by it. The others were fine because they knew he had the beast god weapon. Fan Feng, however, looked at Jian Wushuang with surprise. She didn't expect Jian Wushuang to have the candle dragon. But the next moment, her aura changed abruptly too. A familiar aura came rushing over. It was the phoenix, one of the 9 beast god weapons. It was also a beast god forged by nature. But Jian Wushuang wasn't surprised. The other party had a beast god weapon. In ancient times, Jian Wushuang was well aware of the news regarding the beast god's weapons. Initially, to gather all the candle dragon parts, he had to extensively peruse ancient texts. However, the beast god weapon of the phoenix wasn't merely an amplifying divine weapon of the beast god but rather a fusion of the weapon with the physical body. The opponent's divine body's immense strength during the emperor's time probably had some connection to that beast god weapon. Otherwise, for the emperor to reach a 90,000-fold divine body wouldn't be so simple. After Jian Wushuang unleashed the power of the beast god, the speed of his absorption accelerated even further. 300 years had passed, 1/3 of the time gone by, and Jian Wushuang's divine body finally reached 70,000-fold. Simultaneously, he had approached within just one battle's distance, becoming the closest among everyone present. Though he progressed relatively swiftly, the enhancement of his divine body wasn't the fastest. It was Gu Qianluo, whose divine body was a set of dry bones, starting from 65,000-fold and, within 100 years, directly surged to 80,000-fold, which astonished everyone. Jian Wushuang and Fan Feng had the beast god weapon, which could enhance rapidly, so that could be excused, but for someone who lacked in every aspect to become the first was truly surprising. Regarding this, Jian Wushuang wanted to shatter the opponent's divine body to thoroughly understand it. Of course, it was just a fleeting thought. At last, I see it clearly. The reason why Jian Wushuang's advancement was slow also had another cause. He was curious about what treasures this cave held that could erupt with such a tremendous amount of divine power. So, mainly to adapt to absorbing divine power and to continue forward, he didn't concentrate solely on absorbing divine power. Now, as he approached the cave, he glanced downward. With just one glance, Jian Wushuang felt a violent force that instantly assaulted his eyes. The pain made him lose his rationality in an instant, causing him to retreat 100 feet backwards. This scene frightened everyone. Wu Zhuo and Hui Qing hastily ceased their cultivation and rushed over. Wushuang, what's going on? Hu Qing stepped forward, astonished. Is there some kind of creature in there? Jian Wushuang felt a deep ache in his head, his eyes stinging so much he couldn't even open them. He shook his head, unable to speak a word. Wu Zhuo placed a hand on Jian Wushuang's shoulder, saying, "It should be backlash. Rest for a moment, you'll be fine." Ha ha! Fan Feng sneered, disdain evident in her voice. What fools! Just like my silly little sister, not knowing there are forbidden things inside that shouldn't be seen. Upon hearing the mockery, Wu Zhuo's expression turned cold, but he dared not retort. Hu Qing, however, was fearless. Standing up straight, she glared at Fan Feng and said angrily, "If you didn't want to warn us, fine, but there's no need for such sarcasm. Humph, a bunch of idiots. I really don't understand why bother raising you natives. What's the use?" Fan Feng taunted a few more times before closing her eyes. Jian Wushuang waved his hand, not feeling particularly foolish about the situation. When there's something to be understood, it's necessary to investigate. That's the path of the strong. If one is always timid and fearful, how can they become strong? So there's no need to pay attention to the other party. Seeing that Jian Wushuang was fine, Hu Qing and Wu Zhuo were returned to their positions to continue their cultivation. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang stayed 100 feet away, beginning to heal the injuries caused by the backlash. He possessed the power of life, so even with a powerful backlash, he recovered in just the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. During his recovery, he suddenly noticed a change in his eyes. They could penetrate with a divine power. His eyes actually contained a power surpassing that of 100,000-fold divine bodies. This can't be possible. Jian Wushuang couldn't believe it himself. He only glanced at the cave, then was struck by a backlash. But after the recovery, it brought him a divine body exceeding 100,000-fold. Although only his divine eyes reached 100,000-fold, the benefits were continuously distributed. In just one day, he increased his divine body by 1,000 times. I understand. Joy spread across Jian Wushuang's face as he took a step forward, approaching the cave directly. This scene puzzled Fan Feng somewhat, not because Jian Wushuang approached the cave again, but because she noticed the disappearance of Jian Wushuang's backlash. To dissipate the backlash in just one day was too quick, even with a restorative treasure, which would normally take at least 100 years. Initially, she thought Jian Wushuang would waste this opportunity in vain, but she didn't expect him to recover and return to the edge of the spring again. Wu Zhuo and the others exchanged smiles, unsurprised by this. But when they saw Jian Wushuang once again peering into the cave with his head tilted, their jaws dropped. The result was foreseeable. Jian Wushuang was once again shaken back, but this time, he saw a blurry mass, unlike last time when he saw nothing. His strength had increased, and with each repetition, he could discern more clearly what exactly was concealed within the cave. Though seemingly trivial, it aided him in swiftly advancing his divine body. With a splash, this time, Jian Wushuang only took a few breaths to repair the backlash of his divine body, returning to its peak once again. The power of the beast god. Jian Wushuang growled lowly, and his divine body instantly soared to 100,000-fold. Buzz! The bursting divine power swept over the nearby people in an instant. This power, except for Fan Feng, was familiar to everyone. When Jian Wushuang battled Wuxia, he had unleashed this power. Fan Feng wasn't surprised by this. It was normal for the emperor to wield the power of the beast god within the beast god weapon. However, Fan Feng was somewhat astonished that Jian Wushuang's mere doubling of the power of the beast god could amplify his divine body by 20,000-fold. This level of manipulation had already exceeded the tribulation realm. She didn't know that when Jian Wushuang originally fused with the beast god weapon, there was an origin source belonging to him within it. Now the beast god weapon was like an extension of Jian Wushuang himself. Naturally, it was much more powerful than when others used it. Now the beast god weapon was like an extension of Jian Wushuang himself. Naturally, it was much more powerful than when others used it. After Jian Wushuang erupted with his aura, he once again stepped towards the cave. This time, many people realized that every time Jian Wushuang was afflicted by backlash, he would rapidly improve his divine body, far more than if they were to sit and absorb for years. And the recovery was fast. Wu Zhuo and Hu Qing knew that Jian Wushuang possessed the power of life, but the others didn't. Seeing Jian Wushuang's actions, Gu Chenluo felt itchy to try. Without waiting for Jian Wushuang to go first, he stepped to the edge of the cave. But before he could peek into the cave's interior, he was overturned by a tremendous force, thrown back thousands of feet, unable to get up for a long time. Fan Feng sneered, but no one approached Gu Chenluo to check on him. Several others who had been eager to try also halted their intentions. They believed that Jian Wushuang must have some ability to quickly overcome the backlash. What a lucky little guy! Tong Tian Buddha, with his kind eyes and benevolent smile, glanced at Jian Wushuang and then continued to absorb divine power. Among the 10 of them, all were engaged in dual cultivation. Their cultivation in the origin source realm was already high enough. There was no need to pursue too much in terms of divine bodies. Of course, opportunities like this free chance naturally had to be seized. Everything depended on their own luck. However, Jian Wushuang was particularly devoted to his divine body. He had perfected his physical body in the past and even integrated the origin source with his divine body, all for the sake of one day making his divine body first class and reaching its peak. The might of the origin source was its own affair. The divine body, too, had its own direction. When Jian Wushuang was a Tao Lord, he had overcome numerous difficulties relying on his divine body. He wouldn't forget the importance of the divine body. Jian Wushuang, standing at the edge of the cave, once again lowered his gaze to the depths. This time what he saw was clearer, a blurry figure below, a skeleton. A golden skeleton. The terrifying power emanating from above filled Jian Wushuang's body. The backlash was terrifying. Jian Wushuang clenched his teeth, staring intently. While his divine body continued to erupt, directly unleashing 3 times the power of the beast god. This amplified his divine body to about 140,000-fold. The divine body surpassing its limits made Jian Wushuang's flesh tremble. If it weren't for that impact, he could have perfectly demonstrated his strength by unleashing 3 times the power of the beast god. But now, after being severely affected, he could only barely hold on. Countless divine power surged into his body. In the starry sky origin source, half of the universe was lit up, with over 5,000 black holes, simultaneously devouring that raging divine power. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's body was utilized to the extreme, and his operation had reached its peak. The absorbed divine power was enough for Jian Wushuang to break through to a divine body of 100,000-fold. Yet he didn't retreat. Instead, he wanted to enter the cave. Jian Wushuang scrutinized the skeleton carefully, and the aura above it was very familiar to him. The skeleton lacked one arm, a golden frame standing there, towering like the heavens. A faint shadow made Jian Wushuang somewhat bewildered. Dong Jun. The owner of the skeleton was Dong Jun, the human he had encountered in the starry sky back then. In the Moro spacetime, Divine Master Huang obtained Dong Jun's inheritance and also gained Dong Jun's arm. Jian Wushuang was very familiar with Dong Jun's aura. How could his skeleton be here? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. When he had seen Divine Master Huang before, he had only obtained a piece of Dong Jun's arm and that stone axe. This skeleton appearing here was probably not related to Divine Master Huang, but rather to the Qixin Temple. Now, Jian Wushuang had no intention of devouring those divine powers. Instead, he wanted to ask the Zhenling about the origin of this skeleton. Dong Jun was slain by Miesheng. This skeleton being here probably had some connection to Miesheng. As he contemplated this, a terrifying force surged out from the cave in an instant, propelling Jian Wushuang far away with its momentum. The others were also pushed back hundreds of feet, and the surging divine power quickly receded, disappearing without a trace. When they looked again, all they saw was a lone armless skeleton suspended in the air of the cave. Miesheng! Jian Wushuang exclaimed in fear. The power of death absorbed all the divine power emitted by the golden skeleton. And the shadow on the skeleton was the appearance of Miesheng. Hee, I knew you were going to run. I've been waiting here for a long, long time. Miesheng clenched his fist with one hand, and the power of death swept across everyone in an instant, transforming into an unbeatable divine power afterward. This was just one of Miesheng's avatars. Although its strength wasn't overwhelming, the ability to manipulate the golden skeleton set it apart. These people couldn't even face the skeleton directly, let alone deal with Miesheng who controlled it. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate. Upon realizing it was Miesheng, he immediately transmitted his voice to Zhenling. Too late. Miesheng, manipulating the golden skeleton, shook his head. A divine power barrier immediately rose around them. The power of the barrier was something Jian Wushuang and his companions couldn't hope to break. Even if Zhenling were to arrive, it would take a considerable amount of effort. At this moment, there were muffled sounds coming from outside. Jian Wushuang knew it was Zhenling arriving. However, currently, the two of them couldn't communicate due to the barrier being broken. It was uncertain how long it would take for Zhenling to break the barrier. At present, Miesheng manipulated the golden skeleton, using that divine power. Even if they joined forces, they would not be able to beat him. The others just stabilized their figures when they heard Jian Wushuang's words, and they were all stunned. Miesheng, Temple of World Annihilation. Zhen Wuyang was the first to guess what was happening. The others also suddenly realized. Fan Feng had just recovered, but she didn't understand much about Miesheng. At this moment, she angrily shouted, "A mere trick, daring to cause trouble in the Qixin Temple. Aren't you afraid of death? TSK. Let me see who this is?" Miesheng slowly turned his head, looking at Fan Feng, and in an instant, a purple light burst out from his eyes. That surge of power was immense, pierced directly through Fan Feng's head. Everyone was startled. Gu Qianluo, who had been injured earlier, couldn't help but retreat to the edge of the barrier. The gap in strength was too vast. Mieshang manipulated the divine power of the golden skeleton, capable of unleashing at least 200,000-fold the divine strength, much stronger than even Guxia. At this moment, Jian Wushuang was heavily injured, and the backlash force seemed to be branded within him, lingering in his body without dispersing despite the continuous cleansing by the rich life power. Everyone, Lord Jinling needs the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. As long as we withstand the opponent, we can survive. Jian Wushuang's expression was solemn as he removed the backlash force while comforting everyone. Zhen Wuyang clenched his fists and said in a low voice, "The time it takes for an incense stick to burn?" He was ready to take action. They were all top inheritors with prestige. They couldn't just resign themselves to fate. They would definitely fight. Fan Feng, who had just restored her head, swiftly approached Zhen Wuyang and said coldly, "Don't rush to act. His strength is not as simple as you imagine. Without cooperation, we'll all die." Fan Feng, after realizing something was amiss, no longer acted arrogantly but chose to join forces with everyone else. However, among the 10 people, Jian Wushuang and Gu Qianluo were injured and couldn't be of much help. Dongxing's and Wanyan's strengths were too weak. Among the remaining few, only Hu Qing, Wu Zua, and Fan Feng had relatively decent strengths. It's not that Jian Wushuang looked down on Zhen Wuyang and Tongtian Buddha. Their strengths were still far behind. At most, they could only rival an average Tribulation Realm cultivator. Their current strength was insufficient to battle against strong Tribulation Realm experts. If you're afraid, you need not bother to intervene." Zhen Wuyang's words were arrogant. This made Jian Wushuang somewhat anxious. He knew better than anyone the terror of Mieshang. "Don't be careless. What she said is right. Without joining forces, we'll all die. As long as we hold on for the time it takes to burn an incense stick, Lord Jinling will break the barrier. We just need to hold out." Jian Wushuang hastily transmitted his thoughts. The time of burning an incense stick was just his guess. Without giving these people some confidence, they wouldn't be able to endure. It seemed unnecessary now. It wasn't that Jian Wushuang and the others lacked confidence. Their confidence was just too excessive. Swish! Jian Wushuang drew out a mass of life power and threw it directly to Gu Qianluo, shouting, "Take it!" A mass of green energy flew towards Gu Qianluo, igniting even greater greed in Mieshang's eyes. In the next moment, she struck directly towards Gu Qianluo. The speed exceeded everyone's imagination. Gu Qianluo was momentarily stunned, only to see the terrifying face of Mieshang and feel the overwhelming aura. Just as he thought it was over, Mieshang's body froze on the spot. Behind Mieshang, a figure appeared. The only strong one among all present who caught sight of Mieshang's figure. Crack! It was Hu Qing. Hu Qing grasped Mieshang's ankle with one hand, shouting loudly as she flung Mieshang out of the battle, and the golden flames erupting from Hu Qing surpassed even Mieshang. "It's you who took away my disciple." Hu Qing soared into the air, looking down on Mieshang with unparalleled dominance. Everyone couldn't help but gasp in shock. They hadn't expected Hu Qing to be so powerful now. Even Jian Wushuang couldn't help but exclaim. Mieshang's divine power just now was at least 200,000-fold. Hu Qing was able to suppress the golden skeleton. At present, Mieshang possessed only a small fraction of the power of death. However, by possessing the skeletal remains of Dongjun, he could harness the divine power within the bones. However, Mieshang's avatar had limited strength to manipulate. It could only exert about 200,000-fold of power. This made Jian Wushuang worried. If not for Mieshang's sneak attack, he could have managed in his peak state. But now, injured as he was, he stood no chance. Unexpectedly, it was Hu Qing who stepped forward at this critical moment. Struggling, Mieshang rose from the ground, his gaze shifting to Hu Qing in the air. His eyes filled with astonishment, and then instantly turned fierce as he made his move. Boom! This time, the divine power unleashed by Mieshang exceeded 250,000-fold. Evidently, he was becoming increasingly familiar with this body. With a swift movement, he was already before Hu Qing. With only one arm, Mieshang chopped towards Hu Qing, while his eyes erupted with immense purple thunder, aiming straight at his chest. Jian Wushuang had somewhat recovered his strength and hastily warned, "Be careful!" At this moment, Wu Zhuo and the others also unleashed their powers, soaring into the sky to assist. Dongsheng and Wan Yan, however, were persuaded by Jian Wushuang to stay back. He could see through their strength. They were merely ordinary Supreme Peak cultivators. Going up there would mean certain death. It was better to protect them here. Under the surprise of the situation, Gu Gengluo absorbed the life power Jian Wushuang sent him. The backlash on his body instantly disappeared, simultaneously converting that backlash into divine power. His divine body erupted to 90,000-fold. Seeing Mieshang in the air, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Whoosh! In a flash, he was in mid-air, casually tearing off the shattered clothes on his body, revealing the grim white bones underneath. Ah! 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 Gu Qianluo clenched his fists, roaring in anger. His aura underwent a dramatic change, and his gaze became even sharper. Jian Wushuang below observed, a hint of surprise flickering in his eyes. It seemed that everyone had their own bottom line. Gu Qianluo must have unleashed some kind of peak secret technique, and it appeared to be the pinnacle secret technique of the divine body path, instantly multiplying his divine body strength 100,000-fold. Furthermore, his origin source also erupted simultaneously, directly granting him the power of the Tribulation Realm. He joined the battle group as well. Not only Jian Wushuang was astonished, even Mieshang was deeply shocked. How could there suddenly be so many forces of the Tribulation Realm within the Qixin Temple? Fan Feng was one thing. As the leader of the 18 divine generals, her background was known since ancient times. But now, even among the inheritors whom he had never regarded highly, there existed such astonishing peak power, capable of erupting with the strength of the Tribulation Realm. Especially Hu Qing, who displayed a power beyond his imagination, more terrifying than the captured Jiangshang. Initially, he had only thought Jiangshang was extraordinary because of Hu Qing. Now it seemed he was mistaken. It was precisely because of Hu Qing's extraordinary nature that Jiangshang possessed such a terrifying power of the Tribulation Realm. Boom! Mieshang erupted once again, directly dispersing the crowd. With his divine power increased to 250,000-fold, he now possessed the strength of 3 Tribulation Realm. Even if Hu Qing and the others each had the strength of 1 or even 2 Tribulation Realm, they were no match for Mieshang. Die, all of you! Mieshang burst into a golden light. His 250,000-fold divine power erupted entirely. His speed and strength doubled. With a flash, he appeared before Wu Zhuo, knee thrusting upward, while a purple thunderbolt gathered in his palm, instantly severely injuring Wu Zhuo, causing him to fall from the sky. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang's life power promptly caught Wu Zhuo. Otherwise, Wu Zhuo would surely have perished this time. Wu Zhuo, having recovered from his injuries, instantly retreated, fearing that Mieshang would target him again. Now that Mieshang's strength is such that once it targets someone, that person is likely to perish. This time, Jian Wushuang acted just in time, but it's uncertain for the next time. Seeing Wu Zhuo flying back lively once more, Mieshang's eyes glinted not only with greed, but also with a hint of murderous intent. This time, it seemed he was going to make a serious move. That trace of murderous intent kept growing. Tongshan Buddha felt it keenly. His aura of Buddhist light burst forth once again, and a vast and mighty power of the universe instantly descended, enveloping everyone together. Tong Tian, leave it to me. Zhen Wuyang nodded at Tong Tian Buddha. The two seemed to have some kind of coordination. Mieshang, who was being pushed out, was just about to attack the universe cover when he found that the pale blue universe cover suddenly shrank, only wrapping around Zhen Wuyang alone. TSK, a divine body path powerhouse. I'd like to see how strong your divine power is. Zhen Wuyang roared, making the heavens and earth lose their color. A huge manifestation of Zhen Wuyang descended, bearing his own likeness. At this moment, Zhen Wuyang was right before them. Zhen Wuyang, in the form of a giant thousands of feet tall, single-handedly withstood Mieshang's punch. This surprised even Mieshang. What surprised him wasn't so much the strength of Zhen Wuyang, but rather that the universe cover could actually block his attack. That was a punch with 250,000-fold divine power. Yet it was blocked. Fan Feng stood on the side, her eyelids trembling incessantly. Once among the top 3 ultimate emperors in the Moro spacetime, how could it be that now, after her revival, so many people have surpassed her in the blink of an eye? Now Jian Wushuang's strength had already surpassed hers. There was also Hu Qing, and the universe cover displayed by Tian Buddha. Originally, she thought that reviving her was to save the situation. Unexpectedly, there were so many people stronger than her. The long-lost sense of oppression in her heart once again made her feel exhausted. She couldn't forget the period when she was suppressed by Emperor Jueyun in ancient times. It's just that Emperor Jueyun at that time was too powerful. He had already rivaled the universe masters. Those were the powerful beings who controlled the universe in the tribulation realm. He was much stronger than Mieshang, who had now possessed Dong Jun's bones. This made Fan Feng feel very uncomfortable. She had thought that, with the fall of the previous strong ones, she should have become the strongest person, but who could have expected that now she couldn't even enter the top 3? Buzz. Although the universe cover was strong, it couldn't stop Mieshang's continuous attacks. 200,000-fold the divine power was not that simple. The next moment, cracks began to appear in the universe cover. Jian Wushuang's aura also began to decline. Just 2 breaths, and Jian Wushuang couldn't withstand Mieshang's attack anymore. Each fist strike made, even though Zhen Wuyang's Tao image had reached the level of the universe, it still couldn't withstand it. Mieshang raised his hand, extending a skeletal palm, gathering divine power, a mass of scorching purple electric light appearing in the palm of his hand. From the size of a fist to the size of 10,000 feet in an instant. The power contained above made everyone inhale sharply, fear evident on their faces. Everyone must die, Mieshang shouted loudly, directly smashing the purple electric light down on everyone. Although he didn't know whether Jian Wushuang's claim of 1 stick of incense was true or false, he was clear that this was the Qixin Temple. The base of Jinling-laid actions lead to changes. It was imperative to deal with these people promptly. He could sense that Jian Wushuang's strength was steadily increasing. If these people weren't dealt with soon, it would be even more troublesome when Jian Wushuang fully recovered. Now, after successfully merging with the Tao, Jian Wushuang's strength was terrifyingly immense. No one knew if the power he displayed on the Grave God Mountain was his full strength. Mieshang couldn't afford to delay any longer. Purple lightning burst forth, directly striking towards the crowd. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed. He knew that if he didn't intervene this time, these people would surely perish. The others he could overlook. But among these people were Hu Qing, Wu Zua, and their companions. These people must not perish. They would need these people to venture into the alternate spacetime and confront Mieshang. He couldn't just stand by and watch. Phew! Although Jian Wushuang's strength had declined significantly and he couldn't intervene personally, he still had the Skysight heavenly chessboard. He revived hundreds of chess pieces bearing various insignias. All of them possessed peak-perfect combat capabilities. Now they came in handy. Some of them even matched the strength of the tribulation realm. Go! Jian Wushuang pointed, and the illusion of the Skysight heavenly chessboard descended. Over 100 figures above began to tremble, then opened their eyes. Block him! Jian Wushuang commanded. These revived chess pieces hesitated not and rushed towards the purple lightning. It was as if moths were flying into the flame, resolute even in the face of death. With these chess pieces obstructing, it gave Zhen Wuyang and the others a chance to catch their breath, and they began to retreat one after another. But the power within the lightning was not so easily deterred. All the pieces were utterly destroyed, leaving behind residual power that left everyone shaken to the core. Even Hu Qing was heavily injured. At that moment, Hu Qing possessed the strength of a two-tribulation realm, second only to Jian Wushuang in prowess. Yet, despite everyone exerting their full strength, they were still no match and had already sustained severe injuries. Although Mieshang was surprised by Jian Wushuang's methods, he didn't dwell on it. However, Jian Wushuang noticed this detail. He had thought Mieshang might be aware of the Skysite heavenly chessboard, but apparently not. Initially, although the first true king claimed that no one knew about his temporal treasure, Mieshang was an ancient monster that crawled out from the higher heavens. Teacher Xianxia existed in the future, while Mieshang belonged to the past. Since Mieshang was unaware of the chessboard's existence, his methods probably weren't as sophisticated as Xianxia's, and naturally, his strength was inferior. This realization eased Jian Wushuang's worries. He feared Mieshang's unfathomable realm, which would complicate matters. Although Mieshang appeared to be at the half-step 7 tribulation realm, Jian Wushuang couldn't be certain that Mieshang had no hidden cards. It was worth noting that Mieshang had slain Dongjun. To Jian Wushuang, the aura of Dongjun was probably no weaker than that of Qixin. At least, he was at the 7th tribulation realm or even stronger. Of course, when Mieshang killed Dongjun, he was still in the higher heavens, much stronger than he was now. Jian Wushuang was not hesitating at this moment. Instead, he stood up. This time, either he would die and these people would live, or they would all die together. Why not become a hero for once? Jian Wushuang took a step forward. Dongshang and Wan Yan wanted to intercept, but although their strengths were intact, they still needed Jian Wushuang's help to withstand the residual effects of the purple lightning just now. Now, going up was futile. Jian Wushuang, Mieshang. The two faced each other, and in the next moment, Mieshang attacked directly. Jian Wushuang's eyes twitched. He hadn't even said a few words, so why was Mieshang attacking already? Being a hero felt a bit frustrating at times. Boom! Struggling to withstand the divine annihilation palm, Jian Wushuang retreated 100 feet, with a powerful divine force still gathering on his chest, lingering for a long time. If it weren't for the beast god weapon absorbing and resisting, he would probably have been seriously injured by now. Mieshang, I'm curious, you've tried to plot against me several times. If you really want to kill me, why bother? You can't take away my origin source, Jian Wushuang said, genuinely curious. Mieshang stared at him unwaveringly, a fact Jian Wushuang understood well. After all, Mieshang could devour his life power. He was Mieshang's greatest opportunity. But if he were to fall here in the Qixin temple, even if his origin source was devoured by Mieshang's avatar, how could he retreat unscathed? Upon hearing this, Mieshang offered no explanation but continued to attack relentlessly, giving Jian Wushuang no chance to stall. As long as I can kill you, I can retreat unscathed. You don't need to worry about that. In fact, you should feel proud that you can merge with me. When the time comes, with us together, we will become the masters of this starry sky. Isn't that exhilarating? Mieshang laughed maniacally. Upon hearing these words, everyone couldn't help but look at Jian Wushuang. Obviously, they were unaware of these matters. However, Jian Wushuang frowned and said coldly, "Why don't you let me devour you instead? I can offer you the entire starry sky. Are you willing?" Devouring the origin source was just that. There was nothing so appealing about merging. Listen to my advice, your strength is too weak. The waters of the starry sky run deep. Even if you devour my power of death, you won't be able to control it. Whether I can control it or not is not for you to decide. Jian Wushuang lowered his head, and a burst of violent life power erupted from him instantly. All the backlash divine power on his body was completely removed. His strength instantly returned to its peak. Jian Wushuang took a breath and looked at Mieshang again, a hint of a smile creeping onto his lips. "It seems you're not willing to say anything useful." Jian Wushuang stared at Mieshang, but his aura had erupted to the extreme. Even under normal circumstances, his peak was now at the pinnacle of the tribulation realm. His life power, especially after becoming emperor and assisting Jinling in reviving the Qixin's flesh body, had become incredibly powerful, far from the weakness Mieshang imagined. He merely wanted to test the depths of Mieshang's abilities. Since the other party remained stubborn, he decided to leave behind a hint of fear before departing. He wanted Mieshang to know that when he returned next time, it would be beyond Mieshang's comprehension. Upon his next return, he would surely slay Mieshang, devour the power of death, and ascend to the pinnacle. Eternal Ancient. Whoosh! A sudden gust of cold wind swept through the suppressed space, leaving Mieshang feeling somewhat uncomfortable. Back when he was with Dao Lord, Mieshang couldn't recognize the power of the starry sky when he peered into it. But now, as Jian Wushuang truly unleashed this terrifying power of the starry sky, Mieshang's face was filled with astonishment. Transformation! Jian Wushuang roared to the sky, and his figure underwent a tremendous change. Even his aura changed its hue. In an instant, he ascended to the peak state, and then pushed that peak state to its extreme. No one knew just how powerful Jian Wushuang had become. If Gu Sha of the Frost Demon clan appeared before him now, Jian Wushuang was confident he could annihilate his soul with a single punch. Within the faint blue flames enveloping his body, there were also wisps of blue arcs. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned light blue as he glanced slightly at Mieshang, and said, "How about it? Not bad, huh?" At this moment, he possessed the power of 3 Tribulation Realm, even rivaling the Universe Master who held sway over the cosmos. Clang! As Jian Wushuang drew the Juyun sword, an overwhelming intent to kill erupted. At that moment, Jian Wushuang stood at the pinnacle of slaughter. Seeing Jian Wushuang draw the Juyun sword, the heavily injured Fanfeng seemed to glimpse the shadow of an ancient emperor in the distant past. Zhen Wuyang and Tong Tian Buddha couldn't conceal their incredulous expressions. Back at the Grave God Mountain, they had only witnessed Jian Wushuang's battle with Gu Sha from afar, and hadn't felt the aura of slaughter emanating from him. Now, up close, they couldn't help but tremble inwardly. Hu Qing stood there, excitedly watching Jian Wushuang, as if everything was reminiscent of the scenes during the Great Desolate Wilderness Migration. Jian Wushuang was once again saving the world. This is the power of the starry sky. Mieshang could hardly believe his eyes. Jian Wushuang remained expressionless, just nodding coldly. The power of the starry sky within him had already condensed into reality, though compared to the power of life, it was merely an adjunct, not his true origin source power. After all, he had yet to illuminate his own starry sky. Over the years, he simply hadn't had the time to cultivate. However, in the future, he was confident he could illuminate his own starry sky and wouldn't need to rely on the stolen power of the starry sky anymore. Humph! Mieshang gritted his teeth, emitting a deep, muffled growl from his throat. The power of the starry sky. He had seen it before but never used it. It was a power on par with reincarnation and spacetime. Jian Wushuang hadn't become that kind of existence. Yet he wielded such power, which indeed surprised and envied him. Why did this power not belong to him? Even if you wield the power of the starry sky, you are still an emperor, a mere ant to be crushed by me. Mieshang erupted in rage, launching a direct attack. But now, Jian Wushuang had drawn the Juyun sword. Even if Mieshang unleashed 250,000-fold divine power, he was no match for Jian Wushuang. Starry Sky Chronicles. Jian Wushuang didn't tolerate the other's arrogance and immediately unleashed his strongest attack. At that moment, the barrier began to collapse. It wasn't shattered by Jinling but by the might unleashed by the Starry Sky Chronicles, crushing the barrier like paper with a single poke. As for the Mieshang who had possessed the golden skeletal frame, its origin source was directly shattered by Jian Wushuang's attack, losing its golden skeletal frame and becoming an ordinary supreme peak existence, incapable of withstanding this sword strike. Disappear! Jian Wushuang's sword cleaved down. The origin source of Mieshang instantly turned into dust. As for the golden skeletal frame, it now lacked even a trace of its golden radiance. This was the first time Jian Wushuang unleashed the Starry Sky Chronicles since becoming the emperor. Even he hadn't expected it to be this powerful. Directly annihilating the origin source of Mieshang's origin source avatar, his sword even severed a bit of the golden divine power from the golden skeleton. Phew! Jian Wushuang gasped as he held the sword with one hand. If it were an ordinary move, he could use the Starry Sky Sword technique and continue fighting for a while, but the strongest sword within the Starry Sky Chronicles, even after becoming the emperor, still put a significant strain on him when unleashed. It drained the Starry Sky power within him in an instant. Even the eternal ancient transformation couldn't be sustained for too long and reverted back to its usual state. Jinling slowly flew over at this moment. Feeling the disappearance of Miesheng's aura, he breathed a sigh of relief, but the killing intent in his eyes remained unyielding. There's no place for peaceful slumber in the bed. This wasn't the first time. Jinling kept calculating in his mind. Once Jian Wushuang was sent away, he would also launch a full-scale war against the Temple of World Annihilation. Since you don't want to cross, then don't even think about it. Jian Wushuang and the others were his backup plan. Whether they succeeded or not, they could give him something to think about. As for the others, he couldn't manage that much. He could only fight. They couldn't afford to drag this out any longer. Otherwise, if they gave Mieshang too much time, trouble would inevitably arise. With a swoosh, Jinling waved his hand, directly healing all the injuries on everyone's bodies. This was tapping into the origin source of the Qixin Temple. Even Jian Wushuang's aura recovered, but he couldn't restore the power of the starry sky. At least Jian Wushuang needed half an hour of rest to completely recover the power of the starry sky and unleash his strongest abilities. Now that Mieshang's avatar has disappeared, you shall continue to cultivate here. This time, I will personally protect you until we journey together to the heavens, Jinling said solemnly. The group was pleasantly surprised and thanked him one after another before returning to their cultivation. However, Jian Wushuang understood Jinling's intentions. This was to prevent these people from leaking information about Mieshang, essentially protecting him in a roundabout way. For this, Jian Wushuang naturally felt grateful. It was obvious that Mieshang had come for him. If this matter were known by other inheritors, and if he couldn't handle it and force Jinling, it might lead to Jinling handing him over to Mieshang. That would be troublesome. Although Jinling could easily suppress others, losing his authority would be disastrous. Credibility was paramount. Sitting cross-legged around the golden bones, everyone once again worked on enhancing their divine bodies. Without the cover of the cave, they were all quite far apart this time. Jian Wushuang was no exception. Although Jian Wushuang's divine body had reached 80,000-fold, he still couldn't get close. He had intended to ask Jinling about Dongjun's matter, but then he realized that if Jinling asked him why he knew about Dongjun, it wouldn't be good. Some things were better left unsaid. So, Jian Wushuang diligently continued his cultivation. After this battle, everyone's perception of Jian Wushuang had also changed, although they knew that Mieshang had come for him. But when they looked at Jian Wushuang, there was no resentment. Their eyes held more jealousy, especially Fan Feng and Gu Qianluo. Though they didn't dare to provoke Jian Wushuang openly, deep down, jealousy brewed within them. Especially Fan Feng, who harbored jealousy towards Jian Wushuang since their clash with Emperor Jueyun, leading to the subsequent discord among sisters. It was all because of her narrow-mindedness. Such people were the most dangerous. 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. It was time to set out. On this day, everyone stopped their cultivation, because Jinling had already set up a teleportation array here to transport them directly to the god's tomb. And from there, they would proceed to the heavenly realm together. After the 10 individuals entered the teleportation array, Jinling remained unhurried. Under Zhu Qi's gaze, he effortlessly collected Dongjun's golden skeleton into his mustard seed. Cough, Zhu Qi. Tell your master for me. I've taken the mountain forest secret realm too. Without waiting for Zhu Qi's reply, he jumped into the teleportation array. The next moment, the array erupted with a dazzling light, instantly carrying the entire mountain forest secret realm into God's tomb. No wonder they were to go to the God's tomb first before proceeding to the heavenly realm. Turns out it was for this mountain forest secret realm. Jian Wushuang was fine with it. He had grown accustomed to such things. After all, the Demon Sound Mountain was obtained in a similar fashion. Though others were surprised, faced with Jinling, they dared not show disrespect. Come with me to the tombstone. Jinling beckoned, leading everyone from the peak of the Grave God Mountain into a passageway. Everything went black before their eyes. When they reappeared, they found themselves in a massive Dao arena. This is the Qixin Temple where the tombstone is located. Originally, it was supposed to be opened soon, but since the tombstone has not been excavated yet, it will have to be delayed for some time, Zhenling explained as they walked, leading everyone to the core of the temple, beneath the manifestation Tao image of Qixin. Jian Wushuang and the others looked up at Qixin. Jian Wushuang was already familiar with the appearance of Qixin. He had touched even the physical body countless times, so he remained calm, showing no surprise. Others, however, reacted differently. Tongtian Buddha and Jin Wuyang immediately bowed in reverence upon seeing such a powerful manifestation, then lowered their heads, not daring to meet the gaze. Wanyan and Dongsheng, too, displayed a similar demeanor after their initial shock, a devout appearance. On the other hand, among the younger generation, each displayed a demeanor of self-assuredness, assessing the situation directly. Zhenling went to the place where incense burners were placed and lit a few sticks for himself. Fan Feng, the leader of the 18 divine generals, knelt down with a thud, tears streaming down his face. Yet he dared not make a sound, fearing to disturb the tranquility of the place. The 3 great divine masters, the 18 divine generals, 108 envoys, the divine masters, all 6 tribulation realm experts, were terrifyingly powerful. The divine generals, like the envoys, were at the supreme peak. But among the divine generals, each were ultimate emperors. They were the closest to Qixin, treated by him as children. Seeing the sorrow in the eyes of these divine generals at the manifestation of Qixin, Jian Wushuang's opinion of Fan Feng softened a bit. After lighting several incense sticks, Zhenling casually inserted them into the censer. Seeing Fan Feng kneeling on the ground, a hint of gentleness crossed his face. "Rise, child," Zhenling said. Fan Feng wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and respectfully stood up. Then, Zhenling turned to glance at the others, hands behind his back, and began. Once, a great being predicted the future for the rising hall, saying that a peerless powerhouse would emerge, but the cost of this appearance would be the withering of countless bones. In the past, I firmly believed it, but seeing all of you now, I have changed my perspective. I believe that each of you has the opportunity to become that peerless powerhouse. Zhenling's sincerity resonated, and the eyes of the crowd glimmered with longing. Who wouldn't want to become a peerless powerhouse? As for the withering of countless bones, it wouldn't be their own bones that withered. Here, I wish you all the best, rapid advancement in your cultivation realms, and an early return to the Qixin Temple, to your homeland, to save the temporal river. Zhenling waved his hand, summoning a jug of wine. Before everyone, a bowl appeared. The wine flew into the bowls on its own. Everyone took their bowls, their eyes filled with anticipation as they looked at Zhenling. Cheers. Zhenling lifted the jug directly and took a gulp. Without hesitation, everyone followed suit and drank it all. Jian Wushuang grimaced, finding the wine unbearably spicy, offering no help to his divine body, but instead making him dizzy. Clearly, it wasn't good wine, even for a farewell drink. Couldn't Zhenling bring out something better? Just as Jian Wushuang was grumbling inwardly, a mirror-like image appeared in his mind, followed by his body returning to normal. In the mirror, the visage of Zhenling appeared. Upon seeing his reflection in the mirror, Jian Wushuang was taken aback. Hee, Jian Wushuang. Zhenling let out a mischievous grin. Deep down, Jian Wushuang felt a twinge of unease. Why did he sense poison in the wine? Were they afraid that the people of Qixin Temple, would betray them? However, this time, Jian Wushuang anticipated the thoughts of others and acted accordingly. Lord Zhenling, what is this? Jian Wushuang cautiously inquired. Zhenling extended an arm from the mirror and spoke. This is a treasure prepared for you. Remember, treasures must be stored in your own origin source space. Otherwise, the cost of teleportation to other spacetimes will be higher than the treasures you possess. Yes, Jian Wushuang hastily agreed, then accepted the small bead. These were some treasures given to them before their departure. After all, in a different spacetime, nobody knew where they would end up. It didn't hurt to be more prepared. This time, it was Zhenling who dug into his own stash and distributed some treasures to everyone. Not only Jian Wushuang but also Hu Qing and others received corresponding treasures. In Hu Qing's mind, Jinling even took out a crystal ball and handed it to him. Hu Qing, I value you the most, you know that. Don't disappoint me. I know your circumstances, but rest assured, I will take care of you personally. Jinling's sincerity was palpable, but deep down, he couldn't wait for Jiang Shang to meet his end. Hu Qing, I value you the most, you know that. Don't disappoint me. I know your circumstances, but rest assured, I will take care of you personally. Jinling's sincerity was palpable, but deep down, he couldn't wait for Jiang Shang to meet his end. Upon hearing Jinling's words, tears welled up in Hu Qing's eyes, feeling somewhat reluctant. Throughout the journey, Jinling had indeed taken care of him a lot. He dared not forget. Once he achieved success, he would definitely repay the kindness. On the other side, Jinling also said similar words to Wuxia. Wuxia, you are my disciple, not the strongest, but the only surviving disciple. Don't disgrace me. Don't come back until you've reached the tribulation realm. Remember, preserving your life is paramount. These words instantly reminded Wuxia of his master from the past. Although they rarely met, he remembered every admonition his master gave them. Just stay alive. Wuxia's facial muscles trembled, showing emotion. Master's teachings, the disciple will never forget. If Qixin Temple faces crisis again, I, Wuxia, am willing to be the first to die in battle. He should have been living in the former Moro spacetime, but the current struggle for survival made him forget the once boundless glory. Full of youthful spirit, he thought, why not look back suddenly? He was determined not to let down the past glory of Qixin Temple, nor would he embarrass his master. Outside, everyone's expressions were grave. Jinling scanned the crowd, his expression turning solemn, and he shouted loudly, "Let's go!" Whoosh! Everyone soared into the sky, tearing through the heavens away from the grave god mountain. From the god's tomb, there was silence all the way as they headed straight for the heavenly realm. There was no pause or reluctance along the way. In the northern border of the heavenly realm, above the mountains, the 10 most outstanding inheritors of Qixin Temple had already arrived. People were waiting for them here. Jinling had to manipulate the great array and couldn't personally send them off. Only Temple Master Xianxia was here to greet them. Surrounding them were over 1 million all-things envoys, all possessing supreme strength. Super all-things envoys controlled by Temple Master Xianxia. Follow me, everyone. Temple Master Xianxia didn't waste any words, leading them directly into the depths of the mountains. Jian Wushuang looked around and felt a majestic divine power. Others felt it too. Temple Master Xianxia didn't forget to enlighten them, explaining, this time, the space-time channel we're opening leads to the temporal river at the core of the starry sky. That temporal river is even more powerful than the Moro spacetime, mainly containing divine power with the origin source as its support. You may find it uncomfortable at first. Mainly cultivating divine power? Jian Wushuang was quite surprised. The origin source was supposed to be the right path. How could there be a focus on cultivating divine power? Temple Master Xianxia noticed Jian Wushuang's confusion and continued, the starry sky is unpredictable. Anything is possible. If there were cultivators focusing on the origin source, then there must be those focusing on divine power. Let's go in. Temple Master Xianxia halted his steps, pointing towards the pitch-black abyss ahead. Addressing everyone, he said, this place is just the entrance to the chaotic flows of spacetime. Within the chaotic flows, there's a formation that can assist you in temporal traversing. Remember, keep all external objects within the origin space. Otherwise, don't blame me for not warning you if anything gets lost. This point had already been conveyed by Jinling. They had long since stored their treasures within the origin space. At this moment, Jian Wushuang only had a set of ordinary clothes on him. No treasures whatsoever. Without hesitation, everyone stepped into the abyss. Jian Wushuang looked back one last time, his gaze lingering on the dense forest before he too entered the abyss. Upon entering the depths of the abyss, everyone initially felt a bit uneasy. Because it was chaotic spacetime, even entry by those in the tribulation realm posed dangers, let alone them. Fortunately, Zhenling had mostly cleared the dangers within the chaotic flows. They only felt a bit uncomfortable physically, but thankfully, there was no real danger. Up ahead should be the spacetime passage, right? Wu Zuo reminded everyone. Jian Wushuang followed his gaze. In the distance, there was indeed a circular passage emitting an aura familiar to Jian Wushuang. Not divine power, but the power of life. This surprised him somewhat. A spacetime passage imbued with the power of life. Unfortunately, his understanding of spacetime was limited, so he didn't fully comprehend. This took him somewhat by surprise. A temporal passage brimming with the power of life. Unfortunately, his understanding of spacetime was limited due to his realm, leaving him unaware. Now everyone had arrived close by. There wasn't time to consider much, so they all entered one after the other. Before entering, Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing agreed to enter together, one after the other. It would be best if they appeared together. They had no idea where the temporal passage would transport them along the river of time. It would be troublesome if they didn't end up together. Hence, each person had already left behind their own code. In the different spacetime, they would use their own names as titles. If they got in and lost their direction, they would first announce their names and then seek refuge in a local power. Once everyone gathered, they would explore together. Even if they didn't want to explore together, they needed to establish contact beforehand. They couldn't afford to act independently. It would be troublesome if they couldn't find each other later. Wushuang, Hu Qing, I'll go in first. Tongtian Buddha entered the temporal passage with Zhen Wuyang. Following them were Gu Qianluo and Emperor Guangying. Fan Feng didn't say much either, flying in behind the two. Dongsheng, stay safe together with Wan Yen. Jian Wushuang reminded as he watched the two enter. With Wu Zuo leading the way, Hu Qing following, and Jian Wushuang bringing up the rear, they all entered the temporal passage one after another. Seeing Hu Qing also entering, Jian Wushuang took one last breath of this temporal river and resolutely flew in. When Jian Wushuang and the others entered, only a moment seemed to pass before they found themselves in the passage, yet they couldn't see anyone around. The spatial and temporal dynamics within the spacetime passage were beyond Jian Wushuang's comprehension, which wasn't surprising. They flew on, reminiscent of their initial entry into the black hole. Jian Wushuang suddenly felt his own cultivation realm continuously declining as he flew. Startled him. Moreover, his life power was rapidly diminishing. What's happening? Jian Wushuang panicked. Not only was his realm plummeting, but his strength was also steadily draining away. Soon, Jian Wushuang fell out of the Emperor realm and became a Tao Lord. Without the power of the starry sky, his life power was completely drained. Jian Wushuang's pupils contracted. If his strength degraded like this before even leaving the spacetime passage, it would be questionable whether he could maintain his immortal cultivation level once outside. That would be troublesome. If he ended up stranded in the wilderness without any combat ability, how would he survive? But now that he was halfway through, it wasn't feasible to turn back. Jian Wushuang could only grit his teeth and continue forward. As his cultivation realm continued to decline, the origin space within his body had turned into a singularity, completely sealed off. Jian Wushuang was no longer even an immortal. He had reverted to being a mortal. As he walked, a bright light appeared before him, followed by a wave of death power rushing towards him. Jian Wushuang felt a sense of unease, thinking it might be Miasheng up to no good again. Without waiting for him to react, he was already falling into slumber. In his dream, he entered another world. His mind roamed, witnessing a vast and turbulent temporal river. 9 heavens and 10 earths. Truly magnificent. However, in the next moment, this temporal river suddenly collapsed. Jian Wushuang, in a daze, caught sight of a celestial maiden. She wore a flowing red fairy robe, her beauty breathtaking. This celestial maiden stepped barefoot into the temporal river. Step by step, she traversed 9 steps, creating a 9-colored sky. Breath, by the 10th breath, she had formed 10 ancient secret realms. As she paused, Jian Wushuang frowned and caught a glimpse of her gaze. That glance stifled his breath. She was a peerless powerhouse who created the temporal river. Jian Wushuang was completely awestruck. When this celestial maiden first entered the temporal river, she was merely an emperor. But with each step, she transcended a tribulation. After 9 steps, she became a supreme expert of the tribulation realm. After 10 breaths, she was invincible. Such dominance. Yet, in the blink of an eye, the celestial maiden's body shattered, leaving behind only the 9 heavens and 10 earths. After witnessing this, Jian Wushuang felt a subtle force pulling him, drawing him into the ancient wood continent within the 10 earths. The ancient wood continent teemed with lush vegetation. As Jian Wushuang's consciousness entered the ancient wood continent, he vaguely heard a voice. "This is my Dao arena, and you dare to intrude?" Startled, Jian Wushuang turned around to see a familiar figure, shielding him from the speaker. Hu Qing. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but call out. But Hu Qing didn't pay him any attention. Instead, he confronted the celestial maiden. To Jian Wushuang's surprise, Hu Qing actually managed to stop her. What was going on? The opponent was a celestial maiden who had traversed the 9 tribulations and possessed the power to create the temporal river. And yet, Hu Qing had managed to intercept her. The crucial question was, how did Hu Qing appear here? He hadn't noticed anyone else's presence. He only saw Hu Qing. At that moment, the others also witnessed the scene Jian Wushuang had just seen. While being blocked by the celestial maiden, they were all stopped by Hu Qing. For a moment, everyone felt an immense curiosity about Hu Qing's identity, but then, the attraction drew everyone into the 9 heavens or 10 lands. Jian Wushuang's consciousness, however, descended upon the ancient wood continent. In the Yu kingdom at the Qingyun sect, the Wu family, drip, drip. The sound of dripping water in his ears woke Jian Wushuang, making him grumpily regain consciousness. As he tried to lift his head, he felt a sharp pain in his chest and an instant wave of exhaustion that prevented him from even opening his eyes. He was injured. Jian Wushuang realized this and tried to mobilize the power of life to recover, only to find that he not only lacked the power of life but even the damn origin source. "Young master, you're awake." A sweet voice came, making Jian Wushuang shudder. This voice, it felt like it reached into his bones, causing shivers down his spine. The crucial point was, were they calling him young master? How did he become a young master? Clearly, he had traveled from another spacetime, so there shouldn't be any familiar faces here. Just as Jian Wushuang was puzzled, a strange memory suddenly struck his mind. Wu family descendant, Wu Shuang. Great Yu Kingdom. 7-star sect, Azure Cloud sect. One after another, unfamiliar pieces of information were accepted by Jian Wushuang. At this moment, he also recognized the owner of that voice. Su Mayor. Jian Wushuang's throat emitted a voice of disgust. She was his personal maid. But according to the knowledge from that memory, this maid was not a good person. He also knew how he got his injuries. Swish. With a strong will, Jian Wushuang flipped off the bed and pulled the maid, Su Mayor, into his arms, then grabbed her slender neck like sheep-fat jade, and said viciously, "Who sent you?" Su Mayor couldn't break free from his grip, her face filled with terror. Deep down, she was even more astonished. How could this loser of a young master dare to lay hands on her? He was only at the Foundation establishment stage, yet he couldn't break free. Ancient moon spacetime. The realm of cultivation here was vastly different from where Jian Wushuang resided. It spanned from post-heaven, pre-heaven, Foundation establishment, myriad forms, nascent soul, Mahayana, immortal, emperor to tribulation realm. The temporal river here was ancient, even mightier than the Moro spacetime, with more refined methods of cultivation. There were fewer delineated cultivation realms, with just immortality encompassing realms like Yen Immortal, Grand Yen Immortal, and Dao Lords. The maid he had by the neck was a Foundation establishment cultivator, while his own body was merely that of a common prenatal cultivator. And he was not even 18 yet, only 17. Yet now, he was unleashing strength comparable to a formidable Foundation establishment cultivator. How could this not astonish the maid? Su Mayor. Young Master Wu Shuang. It's me, Mayor. Su Meyer attempted to explain. But Jian Wushuang was resolute, gripping Su Meyer's face in his hand, his voice cold. If you don't start telling the truth, I'll tear your face apart. From disbelief, Su Meyer's expression turned to fear. She could sense that this young master seemed different, not like before. If she kept hiding, he might actually tear her face apart. I'll talk. Young master. Mayor will tell you everything. Jian Wushuang pushed her away and got off the bed. But the sensation of tearing in his chest almost made him faint. When he touched his chest, it was covered in blood.